Rockville. Today is January 13, 2025, meeting 2-25. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I also want to welcome Troop 3. Come on up and join us.
Everybody, please make the American flag. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic from which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you to Troop 3. You've been seeing in and out of our meetings more troops getting involved in our pledge and observing our meetings, and we appreciate you being here. Okay, we'll next move to agenda review. Ms. Sarah Taylor-Farrell.
Madam Mayor and council members, we had a revised update to 11A, the town center. It included the public comment that we received today up until about 3 o'clock. Also, there are comments that came in after 3 o'clock on the community forum speakers list, and we'll make sure that those comments get included in the public record as well.
Thank you very much. And I had one other question for my colleagues. We have a few agenda items under our work session, and I wanted to see if we could move, action. The proclamations item from number 2 to number 3 so that we can take the potential zoning text amendment before that. Is that everyone okay with that? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right. With that, we'll begin with community forum. All persons addressing the mayor and council shall speak in a civil and courteous manner. This is your time to share your ideas and concerns. Oops, sorry, city manager's report. I wanted to go back to I was excited about the community forum. I see a lot of people here today. Welcome, Jeff Mihalik.
Mayor Ashland, members of City Council. I was over here pouting for a minute.
That's all right.
My goodness. So, good evening. Just a quick update on the cold weather snap and a few things just for residents. First of all, I want to thank again the Public Works crews and our Rec and Park crews for doing a really fantastic job removing snow from the streets, from city sidewalks and bicycle paths around city facilities. They did a fantastic job. Really appreciate that. Just a quick reminder for property owners in the city that are adjacent to sidewalks, et cetera. There really is their responsibility to clear those sidewalks right up into the intersections. There's a few areas, few pockets in the city as we drive around. Some council members sent me pictures, which I appreciate. Just a reminder that property owners are responsible for cleaning those sidewalks. If they need to go out and touch some things up, that would be great. All it does is provide people with great opportunities to get along the sidewalks, and keep in mind that some folks are mobility challenged, and it's important that they can be able to get across those sidewalks as well. So just a reminder of that obligation for property owners for both residential and commercial. Mm-hmm. Also, there's been a number of water main breaks throughout the region, to the point where WSSC, which provides water service to about 30% of the city, is talking about going on water restrictions and had some, so that's unfortunate. But I am pleased to tell you that the city's water system, the water system that we're responsible for, the pipes, we've experienced some water main breaks, but not nearly to the extent that some of the other parts of the region. So I just want to acknowledge, again, Public Works Department for ongoing maintenance and care of those pipes. We do not have any water main breaks active right now that the city owns, which is good news. So we do not anticipate having any water restrictions at all. Having said that, long pause for effect. It could change because when the water flips again, warm to cold and warm to cold, that's when those water main breaks happen. So we'll be diligent on our water mains, but right now, not anticipating any changes at all. We have good flows, we have good pressure, and we expect that to be maintained for the foreseeable future. Lastly, we are deeply engaged in building a recommended budget for City Council. I think I was in 6 hours of budget meetings today. So if residents have not had the chance to fill out the budget survey, it's not too late. We encourage them to look at the budget survey and share some feedback, which staff will see, mayor and council will see, et cetera. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I want to also thank staff for, I'll take the community forum list. Thank you. Thank you. I also want to thank staff for all the work you've done to clear the snow. It's really appreciated. I know that crews met over the weekend, been working around the clock And I can tell you that people feel a difference when they move from Rockville and outside our jurisdiction. So kudos to the team. Want to echo the comments to property owners, and I also would say working with other partner jurisdictions where it's like state roads as well as our bus stops to make sure people have a safe place to be. So I just wanted to note that. Two other quick things. WSSC, I think people should have gotten alerts directly, but if you want, they have a news alert that's gone out. This does not affect Rockville water, but please take note because they're asking for a reduction in water usage while they address if they had over 100 water main breaks. Just wanted to note that the city does replace several of its pipes throughout the years. That helps us to be not having the same level of breaks. So I want to acknowledge staff's ongoing efforts to be proactive on that matter. Thank you very much. Councilmember Jackson. And then Councilmember Van Grack.
Thanks. I just want to say that my heart goes out to the firefighters. They recently lost a member, Christopher Higgins was his name. And, firefighting is a really dangerous profession. And it's really a family. And so when one firefighter loses their life, everybody feels it, whether it's the county or the city. And I just want to say that I'm really sorry, and my heart goes out to the Christopher and his family and the firefighters. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as we're thinking about firefighters, thinking about all those who are firefighting out in California and all the families affected. Councilmember Van Grack.
Nope, I was just going to go ask the same thing.
Dr. Miles, and then Councilmember Larry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Did we talk about the change in time of the MLK ceremony?
You can raise it again. Go ahead.
Okay, just of note for those, this Sunday's Martin Luther King program for the city will be, I believe the time is now 1:30 to 3:30 over at Bell Elementary School. So just want to reflect that, particularly for those who attend church on Sunday, they can attend both. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's also several activities, volunteer activities to get involved. Councilmember Valeri.
I just wanted to not only say ditto on the amazing work of Public Works and everybody for snow removal. I do want to reiterate, I believe it's 24 hours after the end of a storm, that the sidewalks and the ADA accessible curb ramps as well need to be clear. It is very treacherous for students to walk to and from the bus stop if that's not done, in addition to people that are professional or non-professional pedestrians. So I just wanted to give that parameter so folks knew that.
Okay. Thank you all very much for all of your comments, and thank you for your report. With that, we will open up community forum. This is the time to share your feedback, your concerns, and ideas. Please address the mayor and council in a civil and courteous manner. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes to speak, and we ask you that you stick to the time allowed. There is a time clock that will be in front of you, so please watch for that. We don't want to use the gavel. Please state your name and whether you live in the city of Rockville for the record. And the mayor and council look forward to your feedback. The first person who has signed up to testify is Vince Chip Boylan. Welcome. Here there's going to be some ducking around.
Very close.
Good evening. You probably have no idea what I'm here to talk about. So I'm Chip Boylan, and with me is Alice Welch. We're both trustees of the Rockville Recreation and Parks Foundation. We are here to report on the foundation's successful Duck Derby this past July 19th. The purpose of the Duck Derby was to raise funds to help defray the cost of replacing the recreation pool at the swim center that is now underway. On that day in July, we filled the pool with thousands of rubber duckies that people had adopted with a chance to win 15 prizes if their duck was one of the lucky ones randomly fished out of the pool. The Duck Derby was a success in every way. Over 2,000 ducks were adopted leading up to the event. We had over 150 duck adopters at the pool on July 16th, eager to learn if their duck was nabbed. The attendees included council members Van Brack, Jackson, and Miles, and we appreciate them being there. We had 15 sponsors from our community that are shown on the board in front of you that offered significant financial help that helped support the event. The success was possible because of the work of the foundation trustees, specifically Kathleen Shannon and other volunteers, the city's liaisons with the foundation, Chris Henry and Elizabeth Deal, and Adam Goldstein and the staff at the Swim Center. And of course, council members Van Crack and Jackson served a particular role in that they did the hard work of manning the long-poled fishing nets that were used to capture the fish, the ducks. Now, these are the duck sizes that they caught. So if you have heard them talking about catching a duck this size, you don't have to listen to them. We'll have no comment on that. The net proceeds of the Duck Derby exceeded $12,000. And that amount, along with other funds raised by the foundation, enable us to present the city of Rockville with a check for $25,000. Okay. Signed by the check is signed by our CFO, Duck Vader. Okay. Before we present this to you, one more thing. We're going to do another Duck Derby this coming summer. This year, the goal is to raise money for the Rockville Recreation Fund, which is the fund that you use to support people for registering for programs and facilities that they can't otherwise afford. And so we need some help with that in terms of donors and volunteers. So contact us at our website, and we'll put you to work and help our whole community. So please, if you'd come forward, I would like to give this to you.
Thank you. We'll make an exception. They gave us $25,000.
Yeah, fair enough. I like that that's what it says on it.
Thank you very much.
I like your pen.
Okay.
Just want to say thank you again. Also, the Recreation and Parks Foundation also funds things and supported a soccer goal net for the Latino Youth Development Program. So you do so much work, and we really appreciate that. Thank you. All right, next, welcome Carlo Galfano.
Good evening, Mayor Ashton and members of the Rockville City Council. Thank you for this opportunity to say a few words about the zoning text amendment to modify the parking requirement for certain types of residential dwellings. My name is Carla Galfano. I'm a resident of Rockville, and I'm an owner of one of the 35 moderately priced dwelling units, MPDU townhouses, with a garage space that's too small. I signed a purchase agreement for my home in September 2021, and I first became aware of the problem via an email in March of 2022 when my home was already fully framed and the drywall was being installed. At that time, the developer, EYA, and the city of Rockville were pursuing the idea of allowing a reduced garage width in the front tandem space. Because my home is one of those with a step, they were also suggesting repouring the foundation to eliminate the stairs. I'm in agreement that allowing for a reduced net width is not a good idea. Even though the back tandem space exceeds the required 9 feet, it is impossible to open doors fully in a mid-sized sedan. And many of these units are family homes like mine with multiple children who need to get out of their cars in their garages. The modifications proposed by EYA to fix the garage are also unacceptable. The intervention required relocating the front door, replacing the wall between the garage and the home with a thinner one, and cutting the foundation. Although I was assured by EYA that the work did not impact the structural integrity of my home, it seems to me that it is one thing to modify a foundation during construction and quite another to change it with a home built on top of it. The relocation of the front door would have been particularly egregious. Not only was it supposed to occur with the occupants inside, allegedly in a single day, but it would have also altered the appearance of the front elevation. The modified MPDUs would be conspicuous, which seems to go against the intent of providing affordable housing integrated seamlessly into planned developments. Perhaps most importantly of all, the work would serve only to adhere to the letter of the law. The front garage space would remain functionally useless, and widening it would reduce the functionality of the main entrance, which is already pretty tight. I also want to go on record with the observation that this situation is especially serious because these homes were not bought and sold on the open real estate market, but through an affordable housing program for first-time homebuyers. My choices are limited. If I leave this home, I cannot afford to purchase a home in Rockville or Montgomery County, and I'm ineligible for any other program, MPDU program. It is impossible to overstate the level of frustration that this lack of agency has added to the circumstances. Of the available solutions, you can't meaningfully make a house wider if it's in a townhome block without knocking the whole thing down. The CTA is certainly the best one. The ZTA will allow us to bring our homes into compliance without construction, and families in need of a little extra space could obtain permits to modify the front X-garage into additional square footage. I respectfully request that the Mayor and Council authorize the filing of the zoning text amendment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, Mark Prashela, former council member, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, council members. Mark Prashela, 816 Fordham Street. Yes, I am a resident of Rockville. I just wanted to comment on the draft town center master plan. And first of all, I want to thank the residents who participated, the staff who ran the show, the planning commission, this mayor and council, and actually the last mayor and council, because we authorized the whole thing in the first place. I think it's a great plan overall. You've gotten, I think, 3 fairly substantive emails from me on a variety of topics. I just want to say I did read up to page 99 of the present draft. And whereas I had very few comments at this point on the plan itself, the one thing that really stuck out at me is this whole idea of a third rail for Mark running through Rockville. And it's just such an awful idea. It would really devastate properties in Lincoln Park, East Rockville, and Twinbrook. It would impinge on numerous businesses and single-family home lots, and making some of them actually unusable. So I just want to say, for anything this council does, I would wholeheartedly put my foot down on that whole idea. Now, I just want to address a few things about the plan itself. One is it allows an awful lot of density, and I think that's a great thing. And it's one thing I fought for time and time again in my 12 years total on the council. You have to remember, when the population is growing and when you have a successful economy and people are moving in like many of us did and many of our parents did, you're going to have a population increase. If you don't provide for those people here, then where do they go? They go up north. So if you're trading off density for sprawl. And I'll say, for those who live close to town center, let's take the West End neighborhood, for example. Eastern edge abuts town center, but its western edge abuts I-270. And we fought several years to so far defeat that idea. But if ever the population up north just overwhelms I-270, they'll be impinging big time on our I-270 neighborhoods. Finally, I urge you to delay the actual approval for a few weeks to give people time to read it. Even I need time to read it, and I've read so many of these master plans and zoning ordinance in my experience, but it's a lot to consider in just a few days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Welcome. see, Tyler Carujas?
Charujas, that's good. It's good.
Okay,
It's been butchered
and
my whole
Jane
life.
Seagraves?
Oh, she actually couldn't make it today.
Okay, no problem.
She
Welcome.
lives in Southern Maryland, so it's quite a bit of a trip. But yeah, my name is Tyler Charujas. Been a resident of Maryland my whole life. I grew up right in Montgomery Village and participated in a lot of the city's facilities and also Montgomery College. So thank you for hearing me out and for everything that you do for the city. But I came here today. I've actually been in contact with a few of you via email. I work for a company called Solar on Earth. We are based in Massachusetts and also have an office in Illinois. And we are working on developing solar farms for different states and different utility companies across the country. So as you know, every single state has an initiative to be either partially sustainable or fully sustainable by a certain date. And that's where you get solar farms that they're popping up around the state. I'm sure every single person here has driven by a solar farm and you look and say, what the heck is this thing doing here? Where is the energy going? We all know that it generates energy for the grid. And so that's basically what we're responsible for doing. We're building these solar farms and are now going to be turning them on. And the state of Maryland has required all the ratepayers to contribute to the fund of these solar farms. The city of Rockville is not, they are also contributing as well through environmental surcharges and MD Power surcharges as well. And so since you guys are funding this program and is now going live, is a free opt-in program. So any resident, government office, commercial property can opt into this program. And by opting in, you're simply supporting a solar farm and receiving a discount for doing so. So these solar farms are producing dollar credits. These credits can be placed onto bills and they monetize in terms of 10%. Some situations with some meters is 5%. So my purpose here is just to introduce this program to the city. And it looked like when I was trying to find some information online, I think that the city in 2023 spent around $1.8 million in electricity. So depending on what meters that you all have, as far as like a small general service meter or a medium general service meter, the savings could be anywhere from $99,000 to $150,000 on an annual basis. That's found money for the city. So this is money that can put right back into the budget. It is free to opt into, free to cancel, and doesn't impact how you receive your energy. You're still keeping whoever you get your energy from, but in the background, you're making a paper shuffle saying, hey, I want my money that you're already taking from me to directly support a solar farm. And in return, you're receiving that discount. So you're not installing any solar. It's already been done. The solar farms are already turned on and they're ready to go. So it doesn't require anything for the city to opt into this program. So that on an average annual basis, I'm not sure if you guys have any information on how much you really are spending from what I could find in the 200 pages I read today, trying to get that number as accurate as possible, but it took some time. But yeah, this program's not a guarantee. So what I'm trying to do is just to introduce myself and to get to the right person of contact to find out how much the city is spending. And then I could put a proposal together for the city to discuss and get accurate details of how much you actually would save by opting into the program.
Thank you very much.
course,
We
thank you.
appreciate it. I know we have folks from our city manager's team. If you have any additional questions in the back, can help get you to the right person. Thank you. All right. Next, we have Dwayne Rollins, Honorable Dane Rollins. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Dwayne Rollins. I live at 560 Anderson Avenue. I've been here for 3 years, and I love the city. I came from Kensington. I served for 4 short years on their council, so I appreciate how difficult your jobs are. And I just want to quickly comment on the parking. I've spoken before about it, and this is for the RTC. I'm just concerned. I continue to be concerned about zero parking requirements for new developments within half a mile of Metro or within a quarter mile of the BRT. I just think it's something you should really, really take a look at and really think hard about it. I also serve on WECA, and I talk to a lot of folks around the city at different events that we do and at our meetings that we have every month. And I haven't spoken to anyone, not one person has said to me, zero parking requirements is a good idea. So I want to share that with you in case you haven't heard that. I also, want to comment. I drive by almost every day past the Dawson's parking or the former Dawson's parking lot, and it's packed. It's packed now. We don't even have a grocery store in downtown currently. We expect to have a really good grocery store, and when we do, it's going to be difficult to park. And if we're thinking that allowing developers to make the decision is a good thing, I think we should really wrestle with that a little further. So thanks so much for letting me speak tonight. Appreciate it.
Welcome, Zoe Polak.
Hi, my name's Zoe Pollock. I'm a Rockville tenant, and I'm here to speak about rent stabilization. This forum has seen months of testimony from Rockville residents about how important rent stabilization would be to them, and yet the mayor and council members Van Grack, Fulton, Valeria, and Jackson continue to block discussion. I understand this work session tonight is about community engagement. I have some questions about what that means to the council. First, I'm going to review some local reporting for context. In 2022, MoCo 360 and Maryland Matters reported on 2 newly formed PACs that were getting involved in Montgomery County elections. One was called Progressives for Progress. It raised over $500,000 from donors in the real estate and development industries and was chaired by Charlie Nilsson, a Bethesda-based developer, Washington Property Company. The other is called Affordable Maryland. It was initially funded with another $500,000 just from Dustin Moskovitz, a California-based tech billionaire. These 2 PACs spent top dollar for mailers, advertising, and political strategists in the county executive and council races. Now, what got them so interested in spending so much money in a single Maryland county? They wanted to block the possibility of a new rent stabilization law. While their messaging claimed that they were progressives, they were willing to spend $1 million in a single election cycle opposing politicians who actually wanted to improve conditions for county residents. As it turned out, they were unable to stop rent stabilization from passing in the county, but they hadn't run out of money. In 2023, MoCo 360 and Montgomery Perspective reported that the same PAC, Affordable Maryland, had been given another $500,000 of money by developers. It endorsed 4 candidates in the Rockville city elections: Monique Ashton, Adam Van Grack, Kate Fulton, and Marissa Valeri. I'm happy to see you here today so that I can ask you about this. To bring it back to community engagement, almost half of Rockville residents are renters. We don't have millions of dollars to toss into election influence campaigns because we got to pay our landlords. So my question is, do you work for the people or do you work for our landlords? Democratic governance means listening to the people. Your community has been and will continue to be very engaged on this subject. It is past time to meet that engagement and act like the public servants that you have been elected to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Justin Lee.
Hello, City Council members and Mayor. My name is Justin, and I'm a Rockville resident. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I urge you to implement rent stabilization in Rockville. Skeptics of the policy have always raised concerns around supply, concern that it might discourage construction of new housing. Well, we must acknowledge that long-term affordability will require demand in changing supply. The question we must ask right now is, what are we to do about residents being displaced right now who cannot wait for new buildings? What do we do about the mental health impact of those who are living with housing insecurity right now, knowing that their landlord could price them out at the start of every new lease period? Constant anxiety and sense of instability, inability to make large financial commitments, this is not a way to live. People of color and migrants are at the highest risk of displacement, and a third of our city's residents are non-US citizens. Many of them are renters. Many know friends and families with uncertain documentation status. In the context of the coming administration's express plan to launch savage attack on migrants, the least our city can do is to give them the peace of mind of rent stability, to be able to financially plan for the future even just a little bit. Increasing supply of housing, affordable housing will be a must, but how could we facilitate their construction without working with those who need them the most? Working class residents have been coming to you months after months, meetings after meetings, telling you we need rent stabilization now, first and foremost. I believe in zoning reform, social housing, and all the other specific policy that can affect supply, but we cannot even start this conversation because you've refused to listen to your own constituents who've been telling you we need rent stabilization. So I will encourage you to please at least open more conversations about this topic, and this is how your residents can feel heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, welcome. You would like to speak as well? Okay. I think you stood up first, and then if you could please state your name and whether you live in the city of Rockville.
My name is Daniel Dunleavy. I'm a resident of Rockville. I support rent stabilization and social housing. As with what Justin said, I think was very comprehensive. I think the fatal flaw underlying the point of view you guys have right now is this, like, maybe there's this belief that to be hard-nosed is a virtue. And the harder you are, the farther you're seeing. You stand on like a mountaintop surveying the wonky truth, which justifies ignoring the present. There's a present need that is not going to be solved through years of building. If you look closer to the thousands who've lost their homes in LA, so the same thing is happening here with real page, collusion, and active evictions, all in search of maximizing your profit. Do nudges work? In climate change, has the market self-corrected? In healthcare, has the market self-corrected? In housing, will the market self-correct? Will another tepid incentive for vultures do the trick? A distant hand is not a wise, impartial mediator of disputes, such as we saw last time with having like gold star ratings. A distant hand helps victors. It is your job to help victims. How could you help? By being farsighted. You could attack the root of the problem. Skyrocketing rents are caused by housing speculation and a system designed to commodify a basic necessity with inelastic demand. The county has received accolades nationwide for building mixed income social housing. Imagine Rockville in those headlines, what diversity of business and velocity of money would come here as workers of all kinds can afford to live and consume here. We'd have so much more spending in the town center, for example, instead of closed restaurants. Imagine the currency actively changing hands as it's kept local, not siphoned off into New York City and Chicago private equity. It's a cynical talking point that rent protections privilege current renters over future renters. Who is actually being privileged here, though? Not any renters, but the landlord who retains his privilege in the ordinary course of business to raise his rents as much as he likes, with the assurance from the government that his investment properties will always rise in value. All under the fallacy that letting him do what he wants is ultimately for the benefit of renters. No renter, present or future, benefits from landlords having the privilege to raise rents 20% year over year. Future renters won't even exist because they won't be able to afford to live here. There will perhaps maybe be a servant class that commutes from far away to serve all of the owners, but there will be no one who is just an average worker who's able to simply exist without being fleeced at every turn. Meagerly increasing the supply of unaffordable housing and then apportioning some of it for MPDUs is simply not enough. We need to actually build housing and have present protections.
Thank you for your comments. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Michelle Shen. I'm here again to advocate for my support of rent stabilization. So first off, thank you, Councilmember Shaw and Councilmember Miles for your support. And to the mayor and the rest of the council, I say shame on you for leaving your poorest constituents behind. And I'd like to respond to some of the items within your plan at the housing stability session on November. I think it's frankly laughable to give gold stars to landlords instead of a cap on rents. The city council has shown us that you prioritize profits over affordable living. Without rent stabilization, only the wealthiest will be able to live here. And I've seen this firsthand. Within the last few years, my friends have been forced to relocate to places like Frederick County and Prince George's County because they can't afford to live where they work. I also want to address something Councilmember Valeri said at the November hearing. You said you didn't know how to balance the needs of people who live in Rockville and people who are moving to Rockville. And I personally don't even know why this is a consideration when the people who live in Rockville are the people who voted for you and are actively being priced out of this community. Without rent stabilization, only your wealthiest constituents can afford to live here, and the rest of us will either leave Rockville or die in the streets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Welcome. Please state your name and whether you live in the city of Rockville.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Chris Madden. I am a resident of King Farm. Speaking of community outreach today's discussion, I'd like to thank Barry Jackson for coming out and meeting us at the Huntington Tenant Association, coming out and engaging with the community. We're pretty harsh on you on rent stabilization. We will continue to lobby you on your stance on that. I would encourage the rest of the council to please go out and talk to renters face to face. It's really a pressing issue, and you could hear their stories one-on-one and hear from them personally about why they're struggling and how this issue is impacting them on their day-to-day basis, how they don't have the certainty that they need of whether they're going to stay in the city or having to move and having to plan around a rent increase. Hear from people who have fixed incomes who can't deal with a rent increase. They can't afford it. They have a fixed income. They can't magically go work at Walmart or something like that to get that supplemental income. So I would encourage the rest of the council to please go out and talk to renters in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Welcome.
Good evening, all. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My purpose is to address a growing concern in our community, the lack of meaningful engagement and the troubling pattern of dismissing community input, which not only alienates residents, but also sets up staff for inevitable challenges. As elected representatives, you have emphasized the importance of community involvement and collaboration in shaping decisions that impact us all. Yet recent actions suggest a disconnect between these principles and the decisions being made. Members of the community have dedicated time and energy to attending meetings, providing feedback, and offering thoughtful recommendations, often drawing from lived experiences and deep knowledge. However, too often, their voices appear to go unheard as policies and initiatives move forward in a direction that contradicts of what has been shared. Hundreds of residents and community members showed up and shared what we needed to be successful to stay housed by having a discussion on rent stabilization, and the body essentially told us to kick rocks. When community engagement becomes performative rather than genuine, trust erodes. Residents begin to feel as though their time is wasted, and worse, that their voices hold no value. This disengagement has real consequences, not only for relationships between the council and the public, but also for the success of our community. Decisions made without the community's buy-in rarely achieve their full potential. Additionally, ignoring community input places an undue burden on our staff. They are tasked with implementing decisions that may lack public support, leaving them to bear the brunt of backlash from frustrated residents. This creates a cycle of tension, inefficiency, and diminished morale within our local government. By not fully considering and acting on community feedback, you are unintentionally setting up the team for failure. The solution is clear: meaningful engagement. This means not just hearing, but actively listening and incorporating community voices into your decision-making processes. It means valuing the expertise of the people you represent and fostering transparency about how decisions are made. The residents of this community and the staff who serve them deserve better. We are asking for a renewed commitment to true collaboration where engagement is not just a checkbox, but the foundation of your decisions. We stand ready to work with you in good faith to ensure that our shared goals are met and that the community as a whole can thrive. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? All right. Okay. Thank you to everyone who participated in Community Forum. We'll now move to a special presentation, 2024 Community Survey Results. Welcome, Mr. Dave Gottesman, and I believe Mr. Brandon Barnett will be joining you.
That's correct. Mr. Barnett should be on WebEx, and he will tell me when to advance the slides.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you. Please proceed.
Sure. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here to present a summary of the findings from the 2024 Rockville Community Survey. Before I begin, on behalf of myself and my Polko coworkers, I'd like to thank Dave Gottesman, who was vital to the survey development and implementation process. Next slide. A little background about Polko and the National Research Center. Polko's online community engagement polling platform provides the information tools local governments and other public sector leaders need. Now, hundreds of organizations nationwide use Polko for strategic planning, budgeting, and empowering resident voices. We make civil, verified community engagement online not only possible, but accessible. The National Research Center at Polko gives local governments and other public sector organizations the data they need to make more informed decisions. Since 1994, we've worked with hundreds of jurisdictions nationwide. NRC is best known for our national benchmarking surveys, such as the National Community Survey, the National Employee Survey, and the Community Assessment Survey for older adults, among others. Our benchmark database is the largest of its kind in the United States. Polko and NRC merged in 2019 to more effectively serve local government and project resident voices. Polko is also exclusive partners with the International City County Managers Association, the National League of Cities, and we work closely with the engaged local government leaders, the Alliance for Innovation, and many academic partners, including the American Association for Public Opinion Research, the University of Wisconsin in Madison, the Hoover Institute at Stanford University, and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Next slide. Before we dive into the results, I want to emphasize that there are a variety of ways these results can be used. Most commonly, the jurisdictions we work with use their survey data to monitor trends in resident opinion over time, to measure government performance and ratings of public trust, and to inform budgeting processes and strategic plans. Our results also allow you to benchmark your community's specific characteristics and services against those same characteristics within other communities in our benchmark database. Our hope is that as these findings are presented, it will spur ideas for you in what could be done with these results or where you might want to dig deeper. Next slide. This was the 11th time conducting a community survey since 2001. Previous was in 2018. All households within Rockville were eligible to participate in the survey. A list of all households within the zip code serving Rockville was purchased based on updated listings from the United States Postal Service. Using GIS boundary files provided by the city, addresses located outside of Rockville's boundaries were removed from the list of potential households to survey. From the list of eligible households, 3,000 addresses were randomly selected to receive the survey. The 3,000 randomly selected households received mailings beginning on September 24th, 2024, and the survey remained open for about 6 weeks. The first mailing was a postcard inviting the household to participate in the survey. The next mailing contained a cover letter with instructions, the 5-page survey questionnaire, and a postage paid return envelope. Both postcard and cover letter included a web link to give residents the opportunity to respond to the survey online. The paper version of the survey was available in English only. The online version of the survey was available in English, Spanish, simplified Chinese, French, Korean, Russian, Vietnamese, and Arabic. The postcards and letters sent to the households also had instructions in all 8 languages. A total of 476 completed surveys were received from these efforts, providing a response rate of 16% and a margin of error of plus or minus 5 percentage points. We then compared the demographic profile of survey respondents to that of adults in Rockville using the most recent Census and American Community Survey data and weighted the survey results. Weighting is a survey research best practice and helps to improve the representativeness of your survey results. The response count by language in English was 466. Spanish had 4 responses. There were 4 responses in Korean, 1 in Russian, and 1 in simplified Chinese. Responses were also tracked by 6 geographic areas, and results can be found by area in the report. The areas were King Farm, Falls Grove, middle north of Maryland Route 28, east north of 28, east south of 28, middle south of 28, and west of I-270. Next slide. One of the advantages to a local government of participating in our community surveys is the opportunity to compare ratings given by your residents to those from communities across the nation. NRC was the first organization to conceive of the idea to create benchmarks of public opinion. This allows jurisdictions to compare ratings of services to ratings of similar services from other communities. There are currently about 500 communities in our database. Rockville received comparisons to the entire benchmark database, which I will be referring to as the national benchmarks, but also opted to receive benchmark comparisons to a subset of communities in Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and Pennsylvania, which I will be referring to as the regional benchmarks, and benchmark comparison to a subset of communities with a similar population size, which we will be referring to as population benchmarks, which was 60,000 to 80,000 residents. Next slide. We'll now move into an overview of the survey results. Next slide. There were 127 evaluative items on the Rockville survey that could be compared to benchmarks. Of the 127 evaluative items, items to which respondents gave quality ratings, 5 were much higher, 39 were higher, and 83 were similar. No item was lower than the benchmark comparisons. Ratings are considered similar if they are within 10 points of the national average, or higher or lower if they are more than 10 points different from the average, and much higher if they are more than 20 points different from the average. These benchmarks results can be found in Appendix F of the report. Next slide. Rockville also elected to compare their results to a custom subset of communities from within the national database. This first subset included Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and Pennsylvania communities. Of the 127 evaluative items, 4 were much higher, 40 were higher, and 83 were similar. No item was lower than the regional benchmark comparisons. Next slide. Finally, Rockville also elected to compare their results to a subset of jurisdictions with similar population size. In this comparison, of the 127 evaluative items, 3 were much higher, 23 were higher, and 101 were similar. Again, no item was lower than this set of custom benchmark comparisons. Next slide. Moving now into the highlights of our findings, I do want to point to a few items that stood out to us as survey researchers. There is a lot of additional data in the full report that we won't cover today. Today's presentation will focus on a few areas that we found to be most noteworthy within Rockville's survey results. Next slide. The first of our key findings was that residents continue to be satisfied with the overall quality of life in Rockville. Next slide. About 9 in 10 respondents rated the overall quality of life in Rockville as excellent or good. Additionally, about 9 in 10 residents praised Rockville and their neighborhoods as great places to live and the city as a good place to raise children. Where comparisons could be made, 2024 ratings were consistent with the 2018 ratings and with those from communities across the nation and the region, except for Rockville as a place to work, which ranked higher than the national benchmark. Next slide. Our next key finding was that the quality of the natural environment and the parks and recreation opportunities are top-rated characteristics. Next slide. The survey asked residents to provide their opinions of 13 characteristics related to community livability in Rockville. All 13 characteristics were rated favorably by at least 6 in 10 residents. Among the highest rated characteristics were the overall quality of the natural environment, parks and recreation opportunities, the image or reputation of Rockville, the utility infrastructure, the feeling of safety, the overall health and wellness opportunities, the transportation system, and overall opportunities for education. It should be noted that some of the total percentages are different than the sum of the excellent good percentages that we're showing here due to rounding. When comparisons to the national benchmarks were possible, 9 characteristics had ratings on par with the national average, while 3 had higher ratings. Those 3 were the overall quality of the transportation system, the overall quality of infrastructure, and the overall opportunities for education, culture, and the arts. When comparisons to the regional benchmarks were possible, 8 characteristics had ratings on par with the national with that average, while 4 had higher ratings being the overall quality of the transportation system, the overall quality of utility infrastructure, overall feeling of safety in Rockville, and overall economic health of Rockville. Next slide. Next, we found that all of Rockville's city services were rated favorably by at least half of the respondents. Next slide. Residents were asked to rate the quality of 44 different city services. All 44 services received excellent or good marks from at least half of the respondents. The top rated services, receiving excellent or good ratings from over 90% of respondents, included fire services, public library services, and ambulance services, though it should be noted that these 3 services are provided by Montgomery County. Other top rated services, considered excellent or good by more than 85% of respondents, included playgrounds, services for youth, fire prevention and education, Rockville provided water services, Rockville provided sewer services, athletic fields, and Rockville provided refuse collection. Services receiving lower marks included code enforcement and land use planning and zoning. However, these are items to which residents tend to give lower grades, and Rockville's rating for land use planning and zoning was higher than the national benchmark comparison. Next slide. In all, 35 services could be compared to the national benchmark. 24 services received similar ratings, while 11 received higher ratings than those given by residents in other communities across the nation. No Rockville service received a rating below the national benchmark. Next slide. Next of our key findings was that Rockville residents tend to feel safe in Rockville. Next slide. Virtually all respondents feel very or somewhat safe in their neighborhood and in commercial areas in Rockville during the day. About 9 in 10 residents also feel very or somewhat safe at local parks and playgrounds and safe from fire, flood, or other natural disasters, while 8 in 10 feel safe when walking or rolling in the city, using paths and trails, and safe from violent crime. Finally, about 7 in 10 feel safe from property crime and in the vicinity of Metro Rail stations. Compared to 2018, feelings of safety in 2024 were higher for paths and trails, parks and playgrounds, and in neighborhoods. Ratings for feelings of safety in Rockville were similar to comparison communities across the nation and the region. Next slide. The next of our key findings is that public transportation is well rated by residents. Next slide. Evaluations for the ease of walking and rolling in Rockville were positive, with about 3/4 of respondents rating it as excellent or good. About 7 in 10 respondents also praised the ease of travel by public transportation and by car, while 6 in 10 gave positive ratings for the ease of travel by bicycle and the ease of public parking. Compared to 2018, the ease of walking or rolling, previously referred to as the ease of walking, and the ease of public parking showed increased positive rankings, while the other items remained consistent. When compared to the national benchmark, all transportation items were similar except for the ease of travel by public transportation, which was much higher than the benchmark. When compared to the regional benchmark, the ease of travel by bicycle and the ease of walking and rolling received higher marks, while the ease of travel by public transportation received much higher marks. Next slide. Our next key finding was that the variety of business and service establishments is rated higher than in other communities. Next slide. When it comes to economic development, about 8 in 10 respondents rated the overall quality of business and service establishments and the variety of business and service establishments in Rockville as excellent or good. Meanwhile, 7 in 10 residents praised the shopping opportunities and 6 in 10 rated the vibrancy of the commercial areas and employment opportunities favorably. Finally, just about 1/3 of respondents thought the cost of living in Rockville was excellent or good. When compared to the national and regional benchmarks, the variety of business and service establishments in Rockville and the shopping opportunities were rated higher, while the vibrancy of the downtown commercial areas and the quality of business and service establishments were on par. Next slide. Next, we found that Rockville receives high marks for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next slide. Respondents were asked to rate how the Rockville community fares in 5 areas related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. About 9 in 10 respondents felt that Rockville was an excellent or good place in valuing or respecting residents from diverse backgrounds and in attracting people from diverse backgrounds. Meanwhile, about 8 in 10 residents felt that Rockville is an excellent or good place in making all residents feel welcome, accepting people of diverse backgrounds, and assisting vulnerable residents. When compared to the national and regional benchmarks, all 5 areas received higher or much higher ratings. Next slide. Lastly, Rockville residents are satisfied with the government's performance. Next slide. All public trust dimensions received at least 60% favorable ratings, with the top rated aspects being treating residents with respect, treating residents fairly, and the responsiveness of city staff. Other well-rated aspects included being open and transparent to the public and being honest. All comparable items were higher than the national and regional benchmarks, except for the value of services for the taxes paid, which was on par with both benchmarks, and the overall direction that Rockville is taking, which was also on par with the national benchmark. Next slide. This has been a summary of the key findings from the report of survey results. In our report, we provide a great deal more information, including detailed responses for every survey question, and for many questions, breakdowns of results by respondent characteristic, including age, household income, length of residency in Rockville, and more. We hope that you and/or city staff will dive deeper into data relevant to their mission, start discussions about the findings, and create action plans to continue to make Rockville a great place to live, work, and play. Next slide. I want to thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity and your time, and I hope everybody has a great evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know this is a special presentation, so we're listening at this moment. I know there's going to be additional time for engagement and follow-up, but just wanted to see city managers, anything, Jeff Mihalik, do you want to say?
No, we're just hope the community, council, and everybody's satisfied with the results, so we know where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all involved. Okay. All right, we'll now move on to agenda item 9A, consent agenda. Ratify and approve the city manager's execution of a grant agreement with the Federal Highway Administration for the FY23 Neighborhood Access and Equity Grant Program for the Twin Brook Pedestrian and Bicycle Bridge Project. Do we have a motion to approve or any questions? Okay, Councilmember Valeri.
I have no questions, but I have a motion to put forward. I would like to move consent agenda item A, the only item, to ratify and approve the city manager's earlier execution of a grant agreement with the Federal Highways Administration for the fiscal year 2023 Neighborhood Access and Equity Grant Program for the Twin Brook Pedestrian and Bicycle Bridge Project.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Fulton seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And thank you to staff for securing this grant. I know this is going to do a lot of work to support equity in our community and reconnecting our communities.
Yeah. That was awesome.
Okay. Now we'll move on to the Town Center Master Plan, introduction and possible adoption of an ordinance to adopt the Town Center Master Plan as an amendment to the adopted 2021 Comprehensive Plan for the City of Rockville pursuant to Section 3-101 on the land use of the annotated Code of Maryland, or possible adoption of a resolution extending the deadline for acting on said plan. I'd like to welcome Andrew Reidelbach, as well as Katie Gerbitz from our planning department, as well as panelists Ricky Barker, Jenny Snap, and Jim Wasilek. Just for the listening public, I did want to note that there have been a number of updates. Thank you to staff for making many, many edits to all the feedback that we gave you last week. I also know that we wanted to make sure the entire public record was posted. I know that there was work to get that done and an update posted today. So just want to thank you for that quick work.
Thank you very much. Madam Mayor, members of the council, we have just a couple of overview slides. I'm hoping staff will speak about 5 minutes tonight, and then we'll turn it over to you all to make some decisions on how you'd like to proceed. So our slides, we're going to go through a quick summary of our project timeline, discussion on January 6th, summary of what we discussed, an overview of the major changes since the mayor and council began their review in October, some public notification measures. There are a few errata that have been identified, as well as your possible action items and paths forward. So here we have our project timeline. You all have seen this timeline many, many times before. This represents the different meetings that we have come before this body for 2 public hearings on October 28th and December 9th, as well as work sessions on December 9th, 16th, January 6th, and our potential adoption date here today. At the January 6th meeting, so just a week ago from this evening when we met virtually, there were 2 kind of major decisions that were made. The first is that we solidified the character areas map. You can see the character areas map here on the side of your screen. And in order to do that, last week you all decided on the character area for the MD 355 corridor, what that geography would look like. That's what you can see in the light yellow on the map. You selected scenario 2, which is roughly a half-mile radius from the Rockville Metro Station with frontage on 355. So the character area map in the plan has been updated to reflect this geography that you see here. There were also several directions from the body regarding parking in the plan that were discussed and made on January 6th. So that included eliminating minimum off-street parking requirements to half-mile from Metro Station and 1/4 mile from the bus rapid transit stations. This is consistent with the plan recommendation in the April version of the draft that was originally released. This differs from what the Planning Commission approved plan had recommended, which was advocating for the elimination of minimum off-street parking requirements everywhere in town center. We also added in a requirement for a parking plan that would require anyone who's hoping to develop within town center to submit an additional document in their development review to get their entitlements, explaining how they're going to handle parking, who are their customers going to be, what parking is being provided, are there nearby public parking spaces that can be accessed by those users, things of that nature. We also did clarify in the plan document that existing requirements for accessible parking spaces do remain. This does not override those requirements in state law. Your staff report provides a list of the summary of changes made during the duration of the mayor and council review. We're not going to go in super detail right now because they are in your staff report, but kind of the high level summary is we've increased our goal for housing units. It was originally 2,000 and that has been increased to 3,000 units. We've modified the requirements for the bonus height program. This has been reverted to what was originally in the April plan, which was you needed to provide 20% or more moderately priced dwelling units or other affordable housing in order to qualify for that bonus height. We made the 2 changes about parkings that we just discussed on the last slide. We modified action 5.1.1, which spoke about the location of the BRT stop at East Middle Lane. We modified this action because the engineering drawings have changed and we wanted to make sure that action was reflective of what the current plans are. We added a new action, 9.2.6, calling for a public park along the future extension of Maryland Avenue. And there have been several edits made to the plan, typos, clarifying language, updating unit counts, updating ridership counts, things of that nature. We've also made some revisions to the plan as far as the character areas and the allowed base heights and bonus heights. You can see this is the same map we have on the screen that we showed a few slides ago showing the current character areas. And then the table shows what was originally in the plan. And when I say original, I'm referring to the Planning Commission approved copy that was transmitted to you all in September and what is in there now. So in the MD 355 corridor character area, we're looking at a base height of 235 feet with a bonus height of 100 feet. This is a new character area, so there was no past heights associated with that when the Planning Commission did their review. In the core character area, everything has stayed the same. So we remain at 200 base feet of height with 100 feet of bonus height. And in the edge, we've increased to 85 feet. That was previously 75 feet for base height. And then the bonus height has also increased. It was previously 25 and it is now at 50 feet. As the mayor alluded to a few moments ago, we did do some changes rather quickly following our January 6th meeting, and we've done our best to try to promote and advertise those changes to the Rockville community. So an updated staff report and brief book were published on January 8th. This is in alignment with direction from you all on January 6th to want to see that turned over as quickly as reasonable. We updated the Engage Rockville page also on the 8th. So the draft plan that is available in your packet for consideration is also available to the public on Engage Rockville. We've also highlighted a summary of changes in a newsflash that's been posted on that site. We also sent out an email on the 8th to all of our project subscribers on the Engage Rockville site. It's about 300 individuals who received that email. Also, as alluded to earlier today, we did update the brief book once again this afternoon to reflect a full digest of public comment since we released the first draft plan in April. It's a rather long document. We provided a table of contents at the beginning to hopefully help organize it a little bit. Much of what's in there you've seen before. We had attachments for both of our public hearings that showed all of the public digest up until those public hearings took place. So some of those you've seen, obviously things that have been submitted to the record since the final public hearing on December 9th, that may be newer to you all. We also have 3 edits to the plan that need to be made in order for it to be consistent with direction from the mayor and council. The first is on page 17. On that page, we're talking about the public process for adoption of the plan. We referenced the October 28th public hearing, but not the December 9th public hearing, so we would recommend that that be added. On page 43, the numbers for the heights and the character areas is mixed up. So we need to update that to reflect that the bonus height for the corridor 355 corridor and core character areas should be 100 feet and it should be 50 feet in the edge. And then similarly on page 109, that is the implementation matrix table that references that item on page 43. So if we're going to change it on page 43, we need to also make sure that that is updated in the implementation table. If this body chooses to adopt the plan this evening, staff would recommend that we adopt it subject to these changes being made. And that brings us to our final slide this evening, which is the paths forward for this body to decide. So the first option would be to adopt the ordinance. It's attachment 2 to your staff packet, to adopt the 2025 Town Center Master Plan as an amendment to the 2021 Comprehensive Plan for the City of Rockville. If we are to go through this path, we would need 1 member of the body to introduce the ordinance. We would need an affirmative vote of 6 members to waive the layover period, and then an affirmative vote of 4 members in order to adopt that ordinance. The other option is to pass a resolution this evening to trigger that 60-day extension that we've talked about. The land use article gives us a 90-day period of time. That deadline currently expires on January the 16th, so on this Thursday. If we were to operate and request that extension, that would extend us to March the 17th, so that would buy some additional time. Because this is our last meeting date before the current extension of January 16th, we do have to make some action today. So it's up to the body to determine which of the 2 actions before you would like to proceed. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you very much for the thorough report. Just want to echo again saying thank you to all of you for the work on the plan. I know it's significant, it's a huge lift, and it's going to help plan out the next 20 plus years. So this is a big deal for us. I also want to take time to thank all the residents who have been participating, their community associations, the stakeholders. A lot of community outreach was done, and a lot of feedback that everyone has provided has been included in the plan. So just want to thank everyone who's taken time to submit comments for this, from little charrettes and prioritization in the community at the Viz Arts area, to coming to community forum. We really appreciate everyone's feedback. I know it takes a lot of time, and we have some very dedicated residents, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. I do want to, I have a couple of questions, and I know some of my colleagues and I have been sending some feedback in to you all for questions to get back to us, and thank you for going ahead and making some of the changes we've already identified, which you noted on the page that you just read. Given the fact that we just pulled together the full public record, and also some of the changes that are still to be made, I'm inclined to say that we need to request an extension, and that allow more people time to read this plan. This plan touches on so many things, from housing to pedestrian safety to inclusion and experience, wayfinding, arts and culture. So there's a lot to the plan, not just the 2 or 3 key items that we've heard about. So I want to encourage everyone to take a look at this plan and to just absorb it, and feel free to send us feedback. But I do think that we need some time just to make some of those final edits that we have talked about, and also to, since we made that final public record available today, that we not approve this tonight, but we allow at least 2 more weeks to do that. So I can't make a motion here, but I would love to hear the feedback of my colleagues and what you think.
On your idea?
On first, I think they want to know which one we're going to do today, and then just the direction. Then we can go into some of the comments on remaining feedback that we have on the plan or questions. Okay, Councilmember Valeri.
Sorry, I've had my mic on that whole time. No, thank you for that clarification, because I was unclear exactly what we were giving feedback on. No, I actually have a question. Is it possible to pass a resolution to request, I'm very bad at math, an extension to January 27th? which would be our next meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Mihalik?
Mayor, we're asking just for the 60-day extension because that's your maximum, but you could adopt the plan anytime within that 60-day period.
Okay, because with
Continue.
that, yeah, sorry, with that, no, I appreciate that. With that feedback in mind, I am fine with an extension to January 27th, which would be our next meeting that we could then pass this.
Thank you. Councilmember Shaw?
Well, I first want to echo the mayor's comments and thank staff for the excellent work they did on the plan. I agree. I feel like we need just a little bit more time, considering that some of the comments came in later today. So I would like to move forward with an extension.
Thank you. Do you have a comment on the time period for the extension?
I think it's okay to request a 60-day, and then we can make a decision during our next meeting in 2 weeks.
So we'd put it on the calendar for potential for approval for the 27th, but request a 60-day. Okay, I'm just looking at the 2 points. Councilmember Fulton?
I'm just going to move it. I move to adopt a resolution extending the deadline for acting on the Town Center Master Plan as an amendment to the adopted 2021 Comprehensive Plan for the City of Rockville, pursuant to Section 3-101 of the Land Use Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland.
Do we have a second or any discussion? Oh, you want to discuss first before the second? Okay, thank you.
The only thing I'd note, and I do support the motion, whether it be worthwhile for us to introduce it first so we can fully have discussion while then also moving to extend the resolution. So we'd extend it, but then we'd have the resolution. Therefore, the layover period can continue to the next meeting, which is happening in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
And I'd ask the moving, Councilmember Fulton, if she would allow that to occur with the pending motion.
Thank you. Let me just turn to staff. Mr. Dawson? Introducing it as is.
I think it would be cleaner to simply introduce and waive the layover on the 27th, because if we introduced it, because I think the way state law works is it has to be approved within the 90 days, and if not, then you have to request the extension, and it would be approved during that extension. And so I think technically it might work, but rather than to depend on that technicality, I think it would be better simply to approve the resolution extending it for 60 days. And then on the 27th, when the body acts, to simply introduce and then waive the layover period.
Thank you very much.
With
Councilman Van
that,
Greg,
with that,
do you
I withdraw
second?
my note and I second the motion.
All right, thank you. We have a motion that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous, so at least we know we have a little bit more breathing room. And I'll now open the floor for any other questions or comments on the draft. And thank you for making some of the changes that we've put forth already. Just to clarify, because I know the public is always anxious to see the latest, when will the edits that you made today be posted? I know you made them to the document already.
Probably in the next day or two. We want to have some time to do a full printout, red highlighter kind of read through of it, but I suspect probably by Wednesday we'll be able to have those online.
Thank you very much. And I'll just ask Ms. Taylor Farrell, we do have a email list of those who've been following this issue and also those who look at our agendas, if we could just push it out so residents are aware. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Valeri.
Thank you. And if anybody is playing along at home, we just want a fuller view of the feedback that we already received, and the time to be thoughtful about that. It is, I think, in the interest of transparency, it also allows then from now until the 27th, when we next meet, it allows for everyone else in the community to also see that as well. And with transparency and accountability, that makes sense. I kind of broke down my feedback for you in kind of categories. One is, and I apologize for not sending this to you by email, but it's not an extensive list. on, where's my page? On page 98, Twin Brook Elementary and Ritchie Park are still missing as schools that feed into both Julius West and Richard Montgomery. Bayard Rustin is mentioned, which is not within this planning area, but those are the two other schools. I'm happy to send the other two to you because they're not huge. A very minor comment / edit. I appreciated the public transportation section in particular as somebody that utilizes public transportation. And I apologize, I don't have my page number for this for whatever reason. Not only the location of bus stops in the future, and I don't need it for this master plan, but going forward, having the routes that are that use that bus stop would be really helpful to see exactly what kind of variety and what kind of connectivity that we have. I kind of did an overlay with the existing Metrobus and Ride-On maps, but in the future, that would be really helpful. Because if there's a bus stop with only one bus that only runs, every other hour, like that's a problem. I do want to say that I probably not shocking anybody. I'm still extremely hesitant, not a fan of the dog park at along 355 North Street Park in that area. Maybe it's because I own dogs that are very prone to running and running very fast. I find it to be extremely dangerous, and I would be open to instead really putting energy into a good dog park at Welsh Park, which has been requested before. Two other going forward things, and then I'll stop talking, I promise. Going forward, I think it would be helpful I don't think that we may need this in the future because we have the zoning ordinance rewrite coming, but a chart or an explanation of the differences between the master plan that we're looking at and the comprehensive plan would be really helpful. As some of us, I just didn't have time to be able to sit there and look at both the comp plan and the master plan. But that would be in general helpful. Finally, and I'll stop talking, I promise. I would really urge the Planning Commission to review geographic boundaries for these various areas ostensibly before any master plan process. I would really put that in front of them. It is within their purview, I know. I believe, Ms. Gerbis, I think that you stated last work session or work session before that they hadn't done a review necessarily of it. So, I'm still struggling with the Ivy Lane community as part of the town center master plan. And so I think thinking through with a little bit more intentionality behind how we're defining a particular area, that would be helpful too, to hear what the Planning Commission thinks. Maybe they have no questions, that's cool. Maybe there's a discussion to be had there. I think that would be really helpful. Okay, I had one last one and then I promise I'll be quiet. Just to put a pin in two things. One, the community center idea, I love it. I'd love to highlight it. I'd love to see that moving along. I think it's a nice complement to the library in Rockville Town Center, or Rockville Town Square rather. And goal 10, the historic section, it was very thin and it was very on the preservation side and not on any of the history or tourism, historical tourism, or how it impacts economic development, making it a destination. I would love to see something, perhaps something coming from the Historic District Commission or Peerless Rockville. What is the role of all these historical buildings? And how do we get engagement there? How do we do education there? And how does that complement the master plan and our economic development goals within the master plan? And now I am truly done.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? Councilmember Van Grack.
And, I just want to double check with staff because I know that we were going through and making sure, because I know that I point out some of the issues that we had with regard to the building heights of what the body had said and going forward. Had staff, as part of the review that you said that you were going to do, make sure that all of the body's determinations of the building heights comports to what's in the plan? Because it's one thing to say it from the dais, but it's most important to have it in the document. And I know that we worked really hard with regard to compromises amongst ourselves. I just want to make sure that someone will at least go back to what the body had said in the straw votes and make sure that when it is clarified that we'll have a week for the public to review those documents to make sure that it comports to what the body had said.
We'll make those changes for sure.
Excellent, excellent. That's my most important point, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, the only other point to note is because we're talking about public feedback, we need to make sure we amend the document because we've agreed to extend the comment period through whenever we pass the document, that we make note in the commentary at the, I believe it's page, I think it's, do I have it 17?
17, yep.
17, that we make sure that we include all the commentary because we're now increasing that time period for the public to be able to comment with the 60-day extension.
Thank you. Well, I'll ask a couple questions. I'm not seeing any hands just yet. Section 1-13 that speaks to the review process and streamlining. There is text that notes that we'd modify the zoning ordinance to eliminate the Town Center Performance District, which has grown defunct since the creation of the original Town Center Master Plan. It notes through this district, certain development applications within Town Center are required to be approved under a Level 2 site plan process, regardless of the scale of development, and that staff would recommend eliminating the performance district and streamline the development and reduce regulatory processes. Can you just share an example of what kind of projects, what's the largest kind of scale project that would no longer then be coming for a Level 2 site plan, thereby coming to Mayor and Council?
Yeah, so as you likely know, when a developer is coming through with a property to redevelop their property, there's a scoring sheet. So depending on the impacts, the size and scale of the development, and when I say size and scale, I'm referring to like physically, like the footprint, the size parcel, but I'm also talking about the intensity of the use there. So the traffic that's generated, the number of units that are generated, et cetera. The project is scored points, and depending on how many points you score, you have different review processes. So something that's super duper minor, say for example, you are amending the number of parking spaces that you're providing in a surface parking lot because you want an EV charger and you have to, repaint some lines. That's something that's really, really minor. Versus if you are, redeveloping 2 city blocks, taking everything down to the ground and starting from scratch, that's a Level 2. That's really going to be quite an intense change of use potentially, and an intense development project. So the process by which, whether it's a staff approval, whether the Planning Commission has to approve, or whether something comes to you all as the Mayor and Council, depends on where you score. How the performance district is currently written is if you are coming in with any development proposal, you must do the Level 2, which is the most kind of advanced of our processes. So if I need to restripe my parking lot right now, instead of that being like a staff or a Planning Commission level approval where it would be in other places of the city, we have a full come to you all. So the intent of this action is to eliminate that requirement. So however you score, that's the process that you need to follow.
Thank you, and that totally makes sense. Just to confirm, a building would have to come before the Mayor and Council, a new building, a whole new building.
Most likely, yes. It's going to depend on how it's scored, but most likely, yes, it will.
How can we just have some assurances that, if the body wants to see new buildings, not we are adding on a shed, but a whole new building that would come to Mayor and Council? What do we need to do in this language to make sure that's clear?
So I think that would probably be different than modifying this action here. The thresholds to choose what goes to Planning Commission versus what has to come to Mayor and Council, that's established in the zoning ordinance. So I think that's a change that would need to be made in the zoning ordinance as a whole, not something specific to Town Center here.
Thank you. I know that we're also signaling for what you're going to be putting in the zoning ordinance, so I wanted to raise this issue with my colleagues and with you all. I don't think that it's intended to just have wholesale buildings go up without any, coming to the mayor and council, but I just put that before so that we can have discussion on it. Did you want to say something? Councilmember Valeri?
Yeah. No, I'm in agreement. I don't need to see, everything in particular, but I think it would be helpful, maybe even just to get generally a list of new buildings. I mean, we don't have to necessarily agendize it. I think, broadly speaking, it would be helpful to know in case we hear from the community and maybe they see like construction occurring and there's a question about it. I wouldn't want to, sit there and be like, I have no idea what is being built there. So yeah, I don't think it needs to be anything intense, but there has to be some sort of delineation so that we kind of get a good sense of what's happening in the city. I don't like surprises.
Thank you. And I think just to note, if we can call this out during the zoning ordinance rewrite so that we can make a formal weigh-in on it. Councilmember Fulton.
No, I was just going to mention on that point, we're a bit far afield from the town center master plan, but I think in the course of discussing the town center master plan, many of us have said several times that we have a whole lot of interest in the zoning ordinance rewrite, and I think it will require a lot of discussion. For what it's worth, I'm actually in favor of less things coming to mayor and council if it's not a huge change to streamline the development process. So I think that will be a conversation that we need to have.
Thank you. There's another line 8.1.1 that says, again, streamline the development approval process for residential projects with more than 25% below market rate income. So that one would note that the development approval process would comply with State Housing Expansion Affordability Act may be amended. And so that's just another question of, is that something you're saying a building would go out without going to mayor and council? I think that's something that the body has to weigh in and discuss.
So not necessarily. That's going to fall under something very similar to what we just talked about with the performance district of how it's kind of scaled and noted. And then the change that you'll see here from the April draft and even from the Planning Commission draft is the reference to the State Housing Expansion and Affordability Act. I suspect most of you are aware of that, but that is a state law that was passed 2 General Assemblies ago. It was modified last General Assembly that basically sets out parameters of if certain things are met for affordable housing developments, we are required to speed up the process. So we certainly want to make sure anything that this plan is suggesting is conforming with that state law.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, thanks. The other thing I just wanted to note is the comprehensive plan originally has a graphic as well as narrative for the zoning, and this plan just has more of a graphic. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't know if that was intentional. I know we're going to go through the zoning ordinance rewrite, but I just note that it's sometimes harder to follow with just a graphic and not narrative. So that is just one thing. I was going back to compare the 2 documents. In general, to the point that Councilmember Valeri raised, I think it's worthwhile just to do another final check on the comp plan to make sure that we're not missing anything essential for a planning document, since this will now amend the 2040 plan. I also agree on acknowledging the schools within the feeder, that comment that she made as well. The other piece is the comprehensive plan version notes that we would coordinate with public and private parking providers in town center. That's on page 262 of the comprehensive plan to improve driver understanding and experience, as well as conduct outreach and education to Rockville residents and visitors about parking facilities and improvement. There's a section in there that I think helps to ease and some of the concerns we're hearing about parking, because people may not realize where we have garages, and particularly when Trader Joe's comes in, for example, people are used to parking on the Dawson's, now called Dawson side, but will now need to be educated to go on the other side if they're not going to Trader Joe's. So I just wanted to note that there were some really good points and language that were in the original comprehensive plan about education and outreach and just creating an ease of user experience so that people coming into town center know where to go, how to access. So I wanted to encourage that be included. Just looking to see. Councilmember Shaw.
Just a note about process. As we collect parking data and information, and I do think it's good to get the information from the landlord, like the total amount of parking as you did with Comstock, but also just adding in the additional feedback that some of those spaces when it was, when we were looking at the 80% capacity, some of those spaces charge tenants an extra $100 to be close to the door, and I think there's about 5 spaces for every floor, in addition to EV spaces. So not all of those spaces were accessible to the tenants, but we were just using that overall 80% capacity, and I think those nuances are really important from the feedback of the folks that live there. So as we gather data and as we do an analysis with parking over time, I think it's really important to get that information, top level number from the landlord, and then check in with tenants about that actual experience.
Thank you. To that point on parking, we did discuss the accessible parking piece in here last Monday. And I think you did include some elements of what we discussed. I wanted to strengthen it slightly. On page 44, action 2.1.1, there's a sentence that says the elimination of parking minimums does not affect any requirements for the provision of loading areas. It stops there. I'm just suggesting that we also add and state requirements for accessible parking to make it absolutely clear that accessible parking still needs to be provided. We also talked about reviewing and providing data so that we can track the policy over time and see how we're doing. So I just wanted to flag that as well.
Can I ask a clarification on that? So the sentence before that reads, accessible parking spaces that comply with Americans with Disabilities Act requirements must continue to be provided in accordance with state code. And then the sentence that reads, elimination of parking minimums does not impact requirements for the provision of loading areas. With that first sentence, you still would like to see it strengthened?
I would.
Okay.
And even if you're streamlining, so you can't take one, the elimination in those areas is not the full town center master plan. In those areas, they need to know that it's still important to do the loading, and they must also do the accessibility parking. I'm fine if you even streamline the sentence so it's cleaner, but I just had a problem with it. That last sentence was very strong and didn't include the accessibility parking.
Got it. Thank you.
Just want to make sure I'm looking at my colleagues to see if there are any other questions. I had a few broader just comments. One is we are trying to make space for new neighbors and to welcome housing into the city as well as to support our businesses and residents. I just also wanted to note that we did not change the adequate public facilities ordinance. We're going to be, especially people are thinking about water and electricity and all those things. I know that you are all watching all that and that some of this work will also improve stormwater management for Town Center. One comment I did want to make is just the importance of coordinating with our schools. They tend to focus on the Montgomery County Development Review Watch and not necessarily our city review watch. I know early in my term, I had just suggested that we share proactive data with Montgomery County Public Schools every August before they come out with their CIP. And I just wanted to say, maybe in that section, the importance of coordinating so that they are prepared for the new residents that we are going to bring. In addition, we'll have to monitor and see how does this impact how many services we have for people. How do we make sure that we're growing with the population in terms of the service and personnel that we need. Councilmember Valeri.
Just to piggyback off that, I also think it's important to note that we are nowhere near moratorium levels, in particular around schools. Just giant neon letters. We're good to go. That does not, negate anything that you said. I just want to be super clear.
I think it's great so that there's no misinformation out there.
Exactly.
And I know the plan addresses that. So thank you for clarifying. The other piece is there's a comment I know in the comp plan that speaks to utilities and the look and feel of them. And we've gotten some concerns from businesses who said, I'm not coming because of some of the leaning poles. And I've heard a lot of residents complain about leaning poles. I didn't see any of that in this plan the same way. So again, I just wanted to make sure that we can take a final look at the comp plan for some of those important elements that speak to the experience. I know that's a coordination with some utility providers, but I just wanted to at least call that out. That is an important part of town center. Last time, we also talked about the importance of wayfinding in the implementation of the plan. So I just wanted to flag that I'm hopeful, I'll say again, that we can have an implementation plan with a % complete over the next 2 to 3 years. The other piece that we did not discuss in detail, I do know that you raised it very briefly, is this idea of business improvement districts and urban partnerships to help support. Right now, we have a lot of individual owners and not the same level of coordination. And so I just wanted to, see if that might be an issue that comes before us in the future. Councilmember Van Graag.
I just kind of have a process question, because I want to make sure that, as everybody here has talked about with regard to the public and the notice, you're talking about in the next day or two, putting a new plan together with the errata and any other comments that we need to, and any review, things that need to be adjusted. Where is that going to be published? For the listening public.
It'll be several places. So it will be on Engage Rockville. We will add that to the document center. We will update the header that's at the top. We will do a newsfeed post, and we will do an email kind of newsletter out to folks. So that's going to be the best, quickest way to do it. When the packet for the 27th is published, which I believe will be on this upcoming Friday, the 17th, it will be in that packet as well, which is visible on the agenda center on the city's website.
All right, so then the next question, because obviously we're spotting a few things that need to be adjusted. If that plan that we put forward, let's say someone else from the mayor and council or even staff notices a correction that needs to be made, or an errata item that wasn't made corrected, and we need to adjust it again, how are that adjustments going to be noted? And so the public is aware of those notices, so that there isn't any surprise, and we can make sure that everybody's aware of a newer version.
Yeah, so certainly if anyone on the body finds any of those things, flag them for staff immediately. So that way we can incorporate them. We will update the staff report, and we will update Engage Rockville to reflect that there are.
Okay, so we will try in real time, so that within 24 hours, everything that you've said with the published versions get adjusted, and a blast goes out to let people know those adjustments have occurred, so they can be aware of those. So the next question is there a way in which we can let people know with regard to any changes that were made, so that they're aware, if a whole new version, they don't have to read the whole thing again?
Yeah, so we will include that in both the staff report and the news flash. We did that for this meeting tonight as well. There's kind of like a bulleted point summary of here are the things that are changed. Here's what to look out for. So we will make sure we do that. If it is going to be after the packet is released this Friday for the 27th, it will be very easy to do that, because if I know on page 17 I corrected 50 to 500, we can very easily say on page 17 50 was corrected to 500, or whatever the example should be.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
If we have any other, not substantive changes, but things that we found that may not be representative, you want us to use a version that you email to us?
Yes, I think that's the best version for now. And then my team will work this week to turn around that as soon as possible. So if you have other comments that we haven't discussed tonight, the sooner we get them, the sooner we can incorporate them into that.
Okay, and I'll just say from my perspective, if you do need an extra day, I'm open to you taking that, so you have time to really scrub the document. I want it to be really good. And I know you've already been working really, really hard. So I just wanted to, just give us notice if something changes. But I do want to make sure that we get it really well and right.
We appreciate that. For certain, we will have it for Friday when the packet is released. My goal will be to have it in advance of Friday, but Friday is our drop dead deadline.
Excellent, thank you. The last question I had, and I know there's differing opinions on this, so I want to put it out there for my colleagues, but when we met last week, there was some changing commentary on how we transition to neighborhoods, and I know that your technical term is laid back slopes. I didn't see that mentioned in the plan at all, but you said that you might be considering how to just signal that you will bring this up or address it later. So I just wanted to get your opinion on this topic.
Yeah, so the laid back slope provision this body has talked about several times at our past meetings. That's within the zoning ordinance and applies broadly to all properties in the city that qualify, not just in town center. So that's why there's not a specific recommendation talking about augmenting that in any way in this plan. But we have flagged it for our zoning ordinance rewrite team as an item that they're going to need to dive into with you all and with the public as they go through that process over the next 18 months or so.
Okay, the comp plan did speak to transition to neighborhoods, and that was their, I guess, the phraseology for it. But is that included in this draft?
We do have language, I believe it's in 3.1.1, that does talk about transition to neighborhoods. It does not use the term layback slope, but it talks about in the building and site design standards how we need to approach, or we need to address appropriate setbacks and transitions to surrounding neighbors.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it's clear and also that we will address it in the zoning ordinance rewrite. There are some places that previously we were told would have them and then, or some places that weren't going to have them and then that switched around recently. So I just want to make sure that's very, very clear and that we have a chance to, address it so that people are aware of what we're doing. Any other comments or feedback? Any clarifications needed from staff?
I don't believe so.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you again on the 27th. Okay. We're going to take a quick break for 5 minutes before we go to the next agenda item. Rockville, today is still January 13, 2025. We are reconvening meeting -2-25. I want to thank our planning team for being the highlight of the evening. We appreciate all the work on the Town Center Master Plan. We're also going to be moving to another big area, that's something that we've been wanting to solve for some time, and that is a discussion and possible authorization to file a zoning text amendment to modify the parking requirement for certain types of residential dwellings. Mayor and Council of Rockville. Welcome, Mr. Waslick, Mr. Barker, as well as panelists Snap, Demai, and Trout.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Jim Waslack for Community Planning and Development Services. What is before you this evening is a proposed zoning text amendment that would modify parking requirements for certain townhouse units subject to certain conditions. What's before you is the authorization to file, which is a necessary step for a zoning text amendment that initiates the public process of the zoning text amendment, does not take action on the amendment itself. So I want to talk a little bit about why we are before you this evening and give you a little bit of the proposed background, which many of you are already aware of, go over the proposed ZTA and the next steps. The text amendment is proposed as a potential solution for an issue that arose in the Tower Oaks development, and more specifically with 35 of the 51 moderately priced dwelling unit townhomes within the Preserve at Tower Oaks community. Those are sometimes known as the Allen model, so we'll use those terms kind of interchangeably this evening. The problem is that one of the two parking spaces did not meet the required width for a parking space based on the zoning ordinance requirements. And I will note that the Preserve was approved as a single site plan that's shown on your slide right now for a mix of single-family detached townhomes as well as a condominium multifamily units and a community center. The specific issue that arose was for the Allen model units that have tandem parking spaces. In other words, kind of one behind the other. The parking space for the interior space measured only 8'7" in width, when the requirement is actually 9 feet. So for a distance of 7 feet at the head of the parking space does not meet zoning requirements. We also found out with more investigation that some of these units also have encroaching steps into the residence, which can impact usability of the parking space. Unfortunately, owners of several of these units began unpermitted construction in the garage area when it became clear that they could not use the garage spaces for parking. The city staff considered a number of potential solutions, including proposing a zoning text amendment that would reduce the width of all garage spaces to 8 foot 6 inches for residential units. And I will note that that is the requirement in Montgomery County, that the city's requirement is 9 feet versus theirs 8 foot 6. Another potential solution was to require EYA to fix the problem in the non-compliant units, and they did volunteer to do that and made the effort to outreach the affected homeowners, but only 2 of the homeowners actually agreed to have those have their units fixed for this issue. And the third solution was the ZTA, which is before you this evening, and that is to require 1 parking space per Allen model townhouse, provided that certain conditions are met. I will say that the solutions were discussed with impacted residents. There were several meetings that were held with Allen model townhome owners and representatives of both the Preserve Homeowners Association as well as EYA. EYA commissioned a parking study that was completed and determined that there was sufficient parking in the neighborhood if the parking spaces were removed from the inventory, the non-compliant spaces. An offer was made by EYA, as I noted, to fix the garage widths. We do know that none of the Allen model owners object to the ZTA that we are aware of at this moment. And the Allen model owners have been informed that permits can be issued for construction, but they, once the zoning text amendment becomes effective, they will need to address any approvals based on their HOA covenants, however. So the components of the proposed ZTA is to amend Article 16, which is the parking article of the zoning ordinance for certain residential units. The residential unit must be a townhouse MPDU within a planned development. And there are a number of planned developments around the city, including King Farm and Falls Grove and Tower Oak. So limiting them to the PDs will limit the applicability. Another condition would be to require on-street parking spaces be provided at a rate of 0.5 spaces per townhouse unit within the site plan area. And as I noted, the entire preserved community is the site plan area. And also that pedestrian access from the unit's development is within 0.7 of a mile of a transit station entrance, a bus stop, or a public parking facility. So these conditions are all intended to limit the overall applicability of this text amendment to solve the issue that is before us, but not cause unintended consequences in other parts of the city. Other expected results of the zoning text amendment will be that the non-compliant garage spaces that now exist will not be considered to be non-compliant moving forward. It would allow for permitted construction in those non-compliant space areas in the future. However, it does not change the overall citywide parking requirement for townhouse units, which is 2 spaces per unit. And I did note that the ZTA allows for the reduction of the amount of required parking for a townhouse MPDU in a site plan that has already been approved, again, to ensure that this solution will apply to the Tower Oaks issue that we have. In terms of next steps, if the ZTA is acceptable, staff recommends that the mayor and council make a motion to authorize the filing of the zoning text amendment. And as I stated, that will just initiate the public review process per the zoning ordinance. That includes the planning commission briefing and ultimate recommendation to you, as well as a formal public hearing in front of the council and ultimately a decision on the ZTA. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. I want to thank staff for answering my questions that I sent in advance. I just wanted to check on one aspect of this. So there are 2 residents who still want the change to be made. I do believe that we need to help them, all the residents who have bought something and then got something different. And I think the ZTA will help address the issue of them and the conflict with the HOA and the residents, and that they only using one space to park because they can't really fit a second car in there. My concern is I want to make sure that we are still holding the developer accountable, and would push to make sure that those two residents who would like to have the garage fixed are able to get that. Is that something that your team has spoken to the developer about and proceeding if those residents still want the change?
Yes, the developer is committed to do that. They were waiting until this ZTA goes through to see the actions, but they have committed to do that.
So they won't say, oh, city solved it, so I'm not going to help the resident.
If the residents want it to occur, that's something that the applicant had already committed to do.
Okay, perfect. That's very helpful. I also want to thank staff for acknowledging the challenges and how this all occurred and the errors on both sides, and to put together lessons learned and processes so that this would not happen again. So I really greatly appreciate the transparency there and the follow-up in the report. And I didn't want to just check, when we make this change, there won't be broad applicability necessarily to other townhome communities that come online in the future, or is that open to other townhome communities in the future?
We believe the applicability will be fairly limited. There will not be new planned developments in the city. There may be new townhouse developments within an existing planned development. We know that there are still some existing developable land in Falls Grove and in Tower Oaks itself as well. So there's some potential there. We're pretty sure the King Farm is pretty much built out, and all the other PDs are essentially built out as well, except for Rockshire. So we believe the applicability will be fairly limited because of that.
Thank you. And just lastly, staff will work with the residents who were making adjustments to their properties without permits to understand the process and make sure that, most importantly, that the work is safe. I know that's part of the reason why we have permits, is to make sure that the work is safe for residents to live in.
Yes, we will do that.
Thank you. Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank staff, as she noted, and apologize at the outset. There were several questions that occurred to me after submitting my questions, as I normally do, and that, on Thursday before the meeting. If there are responses that need time to come back, it's okay. I don't mean to put y'all on the spot, and again, my apologies. The one question that occurs, you mentioned that there are two of the current inhabitants of the 35, 2 among 35, that are in favor of the developer EYA making the change. How was it assessed whether or not they did or did not want a modification of the 35 units? Were they going door to door? Was it like a survey? Or I'm just curious. I just want to make sure we have good data to determine whether or not it is a minority, or is it just a sampling error or sample problem?
There was written communication on the part of EYA to each affected property owner.
And I do know that some of the folks who live in PDUs don't necessarily speak English as a first language. So I'm curious. Again, apologies. This is me like Monday morning quarterbacking, data. I just want to make sure from a feedback perspective we have good data. I do think we're in between a rock and a hard place for a variety of reasons. Things that are built. And the only additional comment I think I'll have on this matter, or they're twofold. I think I'm going to probably, based on the assumption that everybody was contacted in the language that they can understand, and that there are only 2 out of 35 people who were requesting this change to the unit, I think this ETA is okay with a couple of provisions. One, I do, as the mayor outlined, think that any construction does need to be permitted, but I think if there's a what I would raise with my colleagues to see if we could waive the fee on any permits. I don't know how nominal it is, but I think it would just add insult to injury. But I do think that there needs to be a process to make sure that whatever is being proposed is structurally sound. I do also recognize that you mentioned that regardless of whether the city approves a permit to do construction, if that's what the occupant chooses to do, that they're kind of at the mercy of the HOA. There has been some tension between the HOA and some other folks who live in some of these units. I do know that, for example, with regard to, this is an example, like solar panel installation, the state had to intervene and allow people who live in HOAs to establish solar panels even if the HOA doesn't want it. And what I'm curious is, again, there's a group of folks who live in these particular units that somehow feel stigmatized. And, you know, I'm not going to cast aspersions, but I just want to make sure that we're being mindful that if we go forward with this and folks want to, you know, make modifications, that folks aren't going to be, or felt to be targeted, and that there's some provisions that we can do as a city to help mediate, or, you know, if the HOA is coming back and saying, you know, rejecting stuff based on trivial, what's the word I'm looking for? Things that just aren't based on things of structure. It seems to be, I wouldn't say necessarily mean spirit, but just ticky-tack stuff. If there's a mechanism, again, this is for us to discuss. I just want to make sure that if we go forward with this, that folks are treated fairly in this unfortunate situation. I think that's all I have. Sorry again about the last minute questions. I'll stop there.
Thank you. I'll just echo the comment about being treated fairly, and I just wanted to pull the needle a little bit, the thread, a little bit about the permitting process. So there may be people who have been affected but haven't made a modification, but now that they have this change may want to. So I think the city needs to think about not just the people who have already made modifications and now need to come into compliance, but a limited period of time, which we would be lenient on fees to allow people who follow the rules but now want to make a change. And I don't want to penalize those people because they haven't done it already. So it could be a narrow window for that to happen, but I think people have been waiting for a resolution on this. It seems like it's almost 2 years. And so I do think there are things that the city can do to help, given that there's a role in there to make the residents whole. And I have other comments, but I'll come back after my colleagues have a chance to share their feedback. Councilman Van Grack.
So a little bit echoing and a little bit kind of following through. First, I'm glad we're moving forward with this because we've obviously got a lot of residents. This is not an ideal situation. But echoing and following up with what the mayor said and Councilmember Miles said, I agree that what we're proposing here is a good fix. It's not the whole fix. Just as you acknowledge, there's going to be some residents that this is not their ideal solution. And I know that from the perspective, oh, well, the developer and the homeowner association says they would be amenable. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with just a wing and a prayer with regard to some of these issues. Just as Councilmember Miles and the mayor were saying, I don't know how we put something together that allows some type of assurance towards what we're doing, that there's going to be an availability for those residents to be able to make the adjustments through the cost, through EYA or whomever, that's appropriate without necessarily fees and without additional costs to those residents. Because clearly this is going to take care of what we've got here, most of them. And I don't want us to have this zoning text amendment gone forward and then we forget about the other ones. I'm not sure what the solution is. I think some of what was proposed before with a fee waiver and some understanding with regard to addressing potential concerns from the association is part of the way there. And I don't know if there's a way for us to memorialize some agreement that exists to allow it to happen. I know the city can only do so much because a lot of this deals with the developer, the homeowner association, and the residents. But if there's a way that we can somehow memorialize a path forward for those residents that aren't looking for this path, and I see that the city manager's turned on his microphone. I don't know if you've got an idea of how we can memorialize it, but just as Councilman Miles and the mayor said, I'm worried about those other residents.
I do have a couple ideas. One, we'll have to think about, are we talking about waiver of fees just for those 2 property owners that want EYA to change the garage? That's one thing. That's easy to define. We can bring that back for the ZTA. But if you're talking about modifications to what used to be a garage space into some other space, we could put that in front of you as well. The part about the HOA, well, I want to research a little bit more, but what I want to talk about with the colleagues is if it was a garage space and the HOA covenant said you can't build out a garage space, but now it's no longer a garage space because of the ZTA, then in my mind, the HOA restrictions on those spaces no longer apply. But let us talk about it and bring it back. We don't need, I hope you guys don't need specific answers from us tonight, but if you guys decide to move it forward, when we bring the ZTA back, we'll give you guys some options.
As a follow-up to that, what you were talking about with the two residents, is there a way that that can be either memorialized so that this doesn't take them out of the concern? I just want to make sure they're taken care of and addressed as opposed to left hanging because of the ZTA that we passed.
Yeah, let us talk to the residents because now that the ZTA has been made, maybe they changed their mind. I don't know yet, so let's reach back out to them.
Councilmember Valeri.
First, I want to start with thank you for the work on this, and thank you to the residents who provided us information about this situation. I'm very supportive of the CTA to the extent that I would welcome my colleagues' feedback and staff feedback. Is there a way to now expedite it? If it is acceptable and we authorize the filing of the ZTA, is there a way to speed up this process, given that it's been a while to get us to this point? That's my first question. And then my second one, it's not really a question, it's a comment. In the draft ordinance that was shared with us, I have just one change to put forward, and that is, and thank you to Councilmember Jackson for making it a little more stuck in my head these days. Under section 25.16.03, letter B, if we could change that to ADA accessible spaces, and also in the first instance after spaces for basically change that to ADA accessible spaces. I know that the code is what it says in Maryland code, so I understand that, but if we can start changing our language, A++. Final point, and then language accessibility is key. And this is, it is distressing to me that it was only provided in writing because of the reliability factor sometimes within writing. I know personally, my dogs have eaten some of my mail and I wouldn't know what I missed. And I also think it's a personal touch as well. But ultimately, at the end of the day, then you would understand or know if we have a language accessibility issue, right? If you knock on someone's door and residents are not able, to connect with whoever's knocking, I think we need to look at that as being a little bit more critical than perhaps was thought in the past. So those are just my couple. But yeah, I would love to expedite this as best as we possibly could, given the staff constraints, because it's taken a while.
Just to piggyback on the comment, to expedite this, I know in the process there's going to have to be a public hearing. Is there a way to potentially look at, instead of going to the planning commission and going through us for 2 public hearings, can we do a joint public hearing? Or reduce the public hearings? I mean, I'm open to either, but I just want to find a way to make this faster.
I think it's certainly something we can look at, not something that we have done frequently, but certainly can be done.
The city to the north does do it.
Yes, we know that.
So I'm just trying to find, to my colleague's point, ways that people have been waiting for 2 years. How do we make it this faster? I think that would be greatly appreciated. And then also, the other comment I wanted to make is, once this is done, I think beyond a public hearing, there needs to be another community meeting. And I want to thank staff. I know Mr. Simino went out, planning staff went out and had meetings, I believe there was in May and then some over the summer. I think this warrants another community meeting to explain that some of this stuff is kind of technical, the paths forward, what is the city doing to make this help make it right? What are we doing about the permits and stuff? I think that would really go a long way to help close this out with the community. And I will just say, there is a role that the city played in this. I know mayor and council was not directly involved, but I will apologize on behalf of the city because I do think that too many people have been hurt by this. I'm happy to see a resolution and a path forward for residents who bought something with their dream to come into their home and to find out it wasn't exactly what it was. So I wanted to go on the record and say that. The last comment I'll make is I know there were some conflicts. This is not related to this particular public hearing, but I would like to just get an update from staff if there's anything to report. I know we had referred mediation services to CCOC, but I just want to make sure that part of it was exacerbated by this issue. So I just want to make sure we're helping on that way as well.
Yeah, multiple times we've offered mediation between some of the, let's just say residents and the HOA. We continue to do that. I'll just say broadly, we're under the impression that the HOA is now generally comfortable with the ZTA amendment. So hopefully those days are behind us. But if we continue to see struggles between groups out there, we'll always suggest getting together and trying to have conversation, work that out.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any other questions? If not, we need to authorize the filing. Who wants to make the motion? Councilmember Valeri.
Thank you. I move that the mayor and council authorize the filing of the proposed zoning text amendment to modify the parking requirement for certain types of residential dwellings.
Do we have a second? Councilmember Shaw seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your work. We'll now move back to agenda item 11B, and this was previously moved down to C. This is a discussion on the approval of policies, procedures, and guidelines for proclamations and certificates of recognition. Welcome to our Deputy City Clerk, Danny Winborn.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Oh, I'm so sorry. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. The city clerk's office is coming to you as a follow-up to our discussion with you back in May. And we wanted to go over what we are proposing for the proclamation process and the certificates of recognition process. What I have here is an outline of what I want to discuss with you this evening. So we have some follow-ups from some of the things that we talked about in May. We want to talk about some of the research that we've done and the categories that you had requested that we come up with. We also want to talk about the proclamation process and criteria, and we've separated it out from the recognition, the certificates of recognition process and criteria. So we'll go over that. But then I want to step back and go over the current proclamation process, because some of your work sessions and some of your sessions that you've had, you all come up with some things that you've agreed to and we've put in place. We want to talk about that. But we also want to talk about standards that highlight what the city, what your standards are, and how we can emulate the best outline of criteria and the things that we want to emulate and show that the city is doing in terms of how we want to do proclamations and certificates of recognition. And lastly, we want to go over feedback from you and ask for your approval. Okay? So follow-ups. Now, remember we met on May 6th, and you gave me some information that you wanted me to follow up with, and we decided that we were going to provide
research. We were to talk about the process for issuing proclamations, the process for issuing certificates of recognition, and you wanted us to define proclamations and categorize them, and we've done that for you. And then we want to put in place policies and procedures, and you also asked for an online request form for proclamations. So we'll go over that. So I want to talk a little bit about the research that we did. We reached out to several of the local jurisdictions in Maryland. We also reached out to a couple of jurisdictions in Virginia, and we also looked at other cities and how they did it, other states, because of our, maybe we had some help with one of our city manager. So we looked at how they did it in some of his former haunts. And we also organized the proclamations by categories, and you can see those there, and we can chat a little bit about how that has been defined, okay? So the proclamation process and criteria. I want to go over this with you. Proclamations that we've defined that recognize an event or a specific day, week, or month. And we've done several of those in the past. They foster goodwill, positive community focus, and positive engagement. They affect the greater good for Rockville residents. They are for public awareness, charitable endeavors, and have cultural significance. They celebrate organizational achievements and milestones. They are issued at the sole discretion of mayor and council, and new proclamations require a 3-week turnaround for approval, preparation, and completion. Now, for certificates of recognition process and criteria, they celebrate Rockville's major milestones, birthdays, and anniversaries of our residents. They celebrate Rockville organizational achievements and milestones. And they celebrate like scouting achievements for boys and girls and Eagles. We do that, and that's wonderful for the city. They celebrate significant events in the Rockville community. And also, we celebrate the activity of our partnerships like Ready, Chamber of Commerce, and other partners in our city. We foster goodwill, positive community focus, and one of your key tenets is community engagement. So that's something that we can do as well. Again, they're issued at the sole discretion of mayor and council. And for those, we'd like a 3-business day turnaround to honor those requests, just so we can give it the right and proper attention. Now, let's step back to the current proclamation process, because these are some of the things that you all have agreed that we should do. Proclamations are read at the first meeting of the month, okay? Proclamations are presented to a Rockville community member, group, or organization. Proclamations without a recipient may be presented at a meeting. And let me get through this, and I want to step back to that for a second, okay? All proclamations will be posted on the city website. There's an annual proclamations list, and I'm asking that you all review it from January to January in December, so that we are making sure that it still has the focus that you all are looking for. And all new requests are discussed and approved by mayor and council in an open meeting, and we get your feedback for that. Well, hang on, let me go back one. Now, as far as proclamations that may not have a recipient, there are some proclamations that we present, and some of them are of a sensitive nature, such as, like Dr. Miles well knows, like pancreatic cancer or some health-related ones, and we don't want to, worry, ask somebody to be uncomfortable when they present something, because we don't want to know, necessarily any health-related things. But we do want to recognize that these are issues that go on in in the community. So we still want to present those and still give those the focus that they need, but sometimes it's very, it's a little, we have to be cautious about trying to reach out to somebody to help to receive it. Now, when we can, we do a great job, and I also reach out to you all as someone you may know who wants to receive something, but we want to make sure that we're being very sensitive to individuals, okay? Now, let's talk about standards. So here's some standards that we've come up with in our research. Proclamations and certificates of recognition have the same set of standards, and they will not be issued if one or more of these conditions exist. And these are very critical, and I'm going to step through them. Matters which defame others, mischaracterize, impugn, or defame the city of Rockville. Matters attempting to influence city policy. Matters of a political controversy, political party affiliations, or political organizations. Individual or personal convictions, and illegal matters. Things that are discriminatory, obscene, or inflammatory. We never want to touch those. Celebrations of a personal nature, campaigns, or events contrary to the city charter, code, or policies. Now, that really kind of concludes it. I want to get your feedback, and I have a couple of questions, and then I want to have a discussion with you. Now, I'm going to ask this question, should all requests for proclamations and certificates of recognition be approved by mayor and council? So I wanted your feedback for that. Should regional, state, or national proclamations be handled differently? Should they be read and posted online, or just posted online? Is the online proclamation request form acceptable to mayor and council? That's a part of the staff report. So I wanted to get your feedback with that. And there are two more questions, and then we can have a discussion. Is the review of the annual proclamations list in December acceptable to mayor and council? And do mayor and council agree that the process for certificates of recognition as presented is acceptable? So I wanted to get your feedback on that.
Thank you. I appreciate these questions, and we'll open the floor to my colleagues.
Okay.
I love that we're getting a formal process around this so that
Yes.
we all have criteria.
Mhm.
And we all know how important these are to either raise awareness and also to bring new members in who may not necessarily come to mayor and council every day, but come here for proclamation and then sit among us. So I appreciate that perspective as well. And to honor the milestones of our community. The question I had about the time frame for 3 weeks for proclamation, that makes sense. The only thing I'll caution is that there are times where there's a death. We've done this for, President Carter was one example. I just wanted to note that sometimes there are exceptions and we don't have warning notices about those things. So I just wanted to say yes, but with,
Qualified, yes.
Yeah. And then I'm fine with the open meeting. I'm also fine with, I know that some of these will come sort of from, if we open it up online, we may get more requests than we're anticipating. And so we'll have to then figure out when do we, respond to the ones that we get online, and when do we just have that discussion. I'm also open to other ideas on how to do that so that we don't have to agendize every other month which one we're doing, so for the request that we get. So I think that there's going to be a little bit of trial and error here because of the form, and maybe we might get more requests that we have to then figure out how we're going to handle.
That sounds fine, and you know that whenever you come to me, I'm ready to go right in there and get it done. So
Yeah,
I don't have a
appreciate
problem
all the
with that.
research that you do as
Yes.
well. Councilmember Fulton.
Thank you, and thank you for this. I appreciate you bringing this back. I appreciate all the thought you put into it. I feel like I started this, so I feel like I should say something. And it's actually great that we're having this on the same day that we're having the Engage Rockville conversation, because to me, that's the point. You know, the mayor said, we all know how important this is for the residents. I don't know, right? I actually don't know what is the most impactful, what actually brings residents in, whether it's us reading proclamations at a meeting, whether it's us on our social media channels, whether it's us going out to the community. I don't know. I do notice that we all often have the same people receiving proclamations for different things. So it seems to be, in general, a small pool. But I also understand that there is value, and no one's going to be successful saying we should like swipe the slate clean and start fresh. I get that. But like one thing I want to make sure, I feel like if there's a tie to Rockville programming, right? If the city of Rockville is doing something or has a program or something associated with what we're giving a proclamation for, that's a good thing to do. Because you can tie it, there's a direct tie to the city. That is like the only standard I can come up with that would put some sort of meaningful, you've given us standards, but they're kind of all somewhat subjective, right? They're all gonna come, many things are inflammatory. Many things are efforts to influence city policy, right? So I think they're gonna be hard to implement. So I would just love, I don't have the answer, but I would love to make sure that we're spending our time and staff's time on things that are impactful and engaging and not performative. So that's where I come down. And the only thing I can offer is tied to actual city programming. Thanks.
Okay, can I just say one thing? That in my working with proclamations and certificates of recognition, you'd be amazed how some people are so touched by us reaching out to them and asking them to come and receive a proclamation, and how much it means to individuals. And I think that's where I'm talking about the greater good and that kind of thing. And I wanted to touch on that because you kind of brought that up too. And I also appreciate you giving me some information about like, how do we do that? So I'd like to explore that a little bit more going forward.
Thank you so much for that response. And I want to be real clear. I was not saying that I don't think it matters to people.
No,
I'm just saying I don't have a way to quantify it and put it in the grand scheme of like what we all spend time on. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Valeri.
That's a really good point, actually. And sometimes perception and being seen is not quantifiable, but it's priceless. I noticed just one slight typo missing thing under the categorization. The Greek genocide proclamation was not under cultural observance, which it should be. If that we could add that to
When you looked at the list of items.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
I did
you.
I did the cross reference.
Thanks for looking at it. I appreciate that.
No, no. On the categorization.
Mhm.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure it got to the right segment. I thought the online form is great. The process for certificates, annual review, both are great. I'm going to put forward a standard idea. And hopefully this might kind of bridge the gap a little. If we have not identified or there is no one available to receive a proclamation, that those are online. And that is the standard, frankly, for what proclamations come when we do our big monthly day. I think that would be easy enough, and it still shows, things happen and people, can't make it and for whatever reason, but here's your month. And you still have a presence, and it can remain on our website and however we're going to do it. But I just throw that out there for my colleagues.
Thank you. I would support that. I know that we talked about that as a potential previously. I think to add to that, we discussed that we could note that it's on the website, so we could say the name and then refer to the site. And then speaking of the site, right now you have to dig through our agenda books to find different proclamations. Are you intending to create a proclamation page in addition to the form?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you. I'm looking to my colleagues. Do you agree with what's outlined here, the form, the approach? Dr. Miles?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sir, are you able to go back to slide 9 or I'm sorry, slide 8, the one just before this? I was trying to make sure I'm answering your questions. Should we go one by one, or what do you think? Or are we just talking?
I think we can just,
Talk?
yes,
Cool.
go for it.
I'll try to go in order.
They're related.
I think because our names are on there, that we should approve them for number 1. Number 2, I don't know. I think it's up for discussion. I agree with the mayor in terms of, or one of my colleagues, I can't remember who it was, I apologize, about whether or not opening the online portal might significantly increase y'all's workload, but to be discussed. And then the next slide, sir.
Next slide.
Yes, sir. Yes to that. To I guess it'd be number 4, or the first one on this one. And I do like, as my colleagues have pointed out, the notion of putting online those for whom there's nobody here to receive them. And then more broadly, I was just thinking about in preparation for this meeting, there was something said, it was on the, so I'm referencing page numbers on the previous agenda before it was modified, but I know this is more for background discussion, or perhaps it's just philosophical, perhaps I'm just blowing hot air, but so it said on there, that they do not constitute an endorsement from us, but it seems kind of weird that a proclamation with all our names on it, at least tacitly, when considered some sort of endorsement. So I don't know if that holds up, but perhaps I'm just parsing words there. Oh, I just had a recommendation, but this is something I guess could be discussed in the leadership planning team meetings. I don't know if we have to start at 5:30. I think 6 was cool because we have a lot of, it seems there's a gap in time between when we do proclamations and when we start the meeting, but that's more in the weeds. Our colleague already mentioned, how do you determine what is controversial? I think that is a subjective thing. It's hard to get at that. And this is, again, this goes back to something we kind of already discussed, so I guess I'm, bring it up. Other than to say, there are certain countries that are being recognized for their independence, and, even with the continent of Africa, I guess there are 55 other countries that were not. So it's, where do you draw the line? But these are just more philosophical questions, nothing that needs to be answered, but just food for thought, and that's all.
Thank you.
Do you think that reviewing the proclamation list would help narrow down some of those? Because I think we're issuing a lot of proclamations. Or that review would help us if you're going to add or remove new ones year to year.
I like that.
And we have not had that in 4 years. So this list has been going on annually for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. It's like it's easy to put on, but hard to take off. Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
I agree with that
approach.
Yeah. I'm seeing all shaking heads on this side, and yes, okay. Anyone else want to weigh in? It sounds like everyone is supportive of the approach. I would like to also just have a trial period with the online form, just to see. It may be that we put it out there, maybe that it's if someone comes to you, then you give them, okay, here's the application. But I just want to make sure that you don't start getting 100.
Okay, that's fine.
So but I do like the consistency of the kind of information that we need to collect, so you have the research you need.
Okay.
Councilmember Shaw.
I also like the idea of the online form. I think, and I like the idea of the pilot period. And then within that pilot period, thinking about like some criteria or standards and further defining what that may mean. Because I noticed a number of the questions were narratives, and I think it may be challenging to, if we don't go with one of the requests, just trying to be able to justify that just overall if we don't have like a list of standards or criteria. So just as that process evolves, thinking about developing that.
Okay. And I guess during that pilot period, I'm sure you'll be giving me your feedback. Yes, okay.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Daddy, could you go back to page 9, 8? So the question you have is, should all requests for proclamations and certificates of recognition be approved by mayor and council? And I just want to drill down on the certificates of recognition. So are they all approved by mayor and council now?
What it takes is kind of a majority. There are some that are, like the mayor said, that need to be turned around rather quickly. And if you notice, whenever there is a certificate of recognition, I always send it to all of you all, so you all know what's going on. So and I usually try to send you the draft, so I get your feedback prior to that. But, we do want consensus when we send these out. We don't want to just, send it out.
No, that's good. So basically what I'm asking is that it's already current procedure and we're going to keep doing it the way that we've been doing it.
Maybe in this pilot process, if there's something that is not working, you'll certainly let me know.
Okay.
There are sometimes that there's certificates, for example, sorry, my mic wasn't on. There's sometimes that there are certificates that, for example, a quick turnaround, we don't have a meeting in, but they meet a certain level of criteria. For example, new business opening in the city of Rockville, right? That's something
exactly
we do.
what I was getting-
So I
Yes.
don't think
I
that we
was
have to
getting at.
wait to come to another meeting for that.
No. And that's why when you come to me with those kinds of things, I will send you a draft and to everyone so you all know what's going on. I don't want you to be blindsided with any of these.
So just piggybacking on that, so if I come to you with a certificate of recognition idea, say a new business is opening up in town center, town square, that you will start working on it and circulate it around to the rest of my colleagues.
Yes, we
Okay.
will.
No, that's perfect.
And I
Thank
think
you.
that's been my practice, and we want to make sure that we continue that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Larry.
Would we all want to review it if we were requesting a recognition for a new vape shop that was opening up in the city? May want to. Just gonna throw it out there. I know that I think I had talked to, I think both you and Ms. Farrell, that you always have the option of removing your name from a proclamation. So that, to Councilmember Dr. Miles' point, in order for us to kind of be empowered to do so, I think a quick turnaround, send us an email, otherwise, proceed forward unless you hear. Like, for instance, today we got a request, I had an issue. I sent right away that there may be an issue here. And that's all I'll say on that. Because yes, we could move forward with a certificate of recognition or whatever, but we should also have the ability to not have our name on something that perhaps we have a sincere held belief that does not align with.
And I would say if there's something that is controversial, that we may need to just have a discussion about it. Because if it's strongly, it represents the city. So we want to make sure we're generally comfortable. If people are feeling uncomfortable about a topic, we need to discuss, and we have in the past. Find a way to come to consensus on the language.
And that's why, I always try to get it to all of you all. And that's why I was asking for like the 3-day turnaround for certificates of recognition. So I get it to you. So if there is an issue that is identified quickly, and Councilmember Valeri, it was great. I saw what you sent today. and we'll work with that. So, but that is why I don't want to, you've noticed that I've always sent everything to the entire mayor and council, and we'll continue with that process.
Thank you. And so to answer the question about all businesses, actually, the certificates are sent to all of us.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my point, because, maybe some of us do, some of us don't. It is what it is. But everybody should have that opportunity. And I appreciate all the work that both the city clerk and yourself have done on this. I know for me personally, I was not as quick on the draw to get you feedback, but I really appreciated a lot of the work that you both did and wanted to thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. And, And I try to be as proactive as I can to get you all information and so you can make an informed decision because I know that you all represent the city.
Thank you. I don't want to go line by line on every proclamation, but I will say if people would like to suggest taking any off, please.
You are open to that?
I do, I have to, because it is, how many pages is this?
Many, many
So
pages.
there are many, but I just want to say we need to look at that too. So I know that we will look at this annually, but if people have ideas, please send them forward.
Please share that with me.
Okay.
Please.
All right, so just to approve our policies and procedures, I know we had some minor modifications on, like, there are times where there is, because of a death or something timely, that we might want to have a qualifier to the policy, so I just wanted to note that as a friendly amendment. But otherwise, we need a motion to move the policies, procedures, and guidelines. Councilmember Van Grack.
Madam Mayor, I move that the mayor and council approve the policies, procedures, and guidelines for proclamations and certificates of recognitions as amended here from the dais.
Thank you. Councilmember Valeri seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And I will take everything you said and put it together for you. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you. We now welcome Ms. Kathy Kirk-Dantzler for our work session on Engage Rockville.
Before I begin, Madam Mayor, can you turn on your WebEx camera?
Is that working?
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I will be presenting to you a proposed community engagement framework. First, I'll start with some background, how we even got here, the requested feedback, give you a little information on the International Association of Public Participation. I will present to you our Engage Rockville framework based on what we received from IAP2, our current outreach and engagement tools and techniques, outreach and engagement opportunities that we currently have and that we see in the future, our next step, and then we'll address the requested feedback. The requested feedback we would like is for the Mayor and Council to answer these two questions. Does the Mayor and Council support the presented framework for citywide community engagement? And are there additional community engagement opportunities the Mayor and Council want to explore? First, I want to note that the Mayor and Council have consistently expressed the importance of engaging the community and particularly have challenged staff for us to do more to engage with the community, specifically historically excluded populations. Currently, the community engagement is decentralized. That means that each department, when they have a project or initiative, they take on the role of creating a community engagement plan that fits their needs for their project and then uses the outreach tools that we currently have. This particular framework will now allow us to centralize how we plan community engagement, to give it a more deliberate look, to make sure that we are checking all the boxes necessary to reach our community so they can feel involved in what we do. One of the first things that we needed to do was to get help, to make sure that we have some type of basis and what is commonly practiced used for public participation. When doing that, the city is now an official member of the International Association for Public Participation. This particular organization, their goal is to help figure out ways for level of communication and participation from the community when cities and governments have different projects. We decided that it would be best to adopt this particular framework. That framework includes 5 different stages of level of community engagement. Is it to inform, consult, involve, collaborate, or empower? Each project in the framework that we are going to develop would answer these questions. What is it that you need from the community or want to engage with the community by putting in these 5 stages? Is it to inform, to provide the public with what the project is about? Or is it to consult with them, get feedback, help them figure out, help them provide us with feedback of the different analysis and decisions that we are trying to make, or to involve them, working with them, to involve them in the process of what it is we're trying to achieve, or collaborate with them so that they can feel and provide different possible alternatives that the city staff is not thinking of, or what actually the community wants and needs, or to empower them, to actually give them an opportunity to make a decision. So that's how our particular framework would begin. We actually use this in the current project, the King Farm Farmstead Rehabilitation Project. We use this particular framework to try to see how we can engage with the community more. So once we decide the level of communication from those 5 levels that I just spoke of, inform, consult, involve, and collaborate and empower, we have different tools and techniques that we can use when we decide what are the levels of community engagement we want to use for any particular project. For inform, that would consist of social media, print materials like Rockville Reports, Rockville 11, the website, newsletters, both print and e-newsletters, consulting with the community, surveys, interviews, focus groups, public meetings, public comments, open houses, public engagement platforms like our Bang the Table site. Also, you can involve with them, by organizing charrettes, focused conversations on what the project initiative is, community liaisons by having the community join in the process, having table talks, going to the cafe, having an open session for people to join us, open meeting space where we're listening to the community to figure out where they want to meet so that they can discuss any particular project or initiative. Card storming, I'm sure the mayor and council is familiar with this. I know we are. As you develop those dots, good dots, or sticky notes or things like that. Collaborate, to just have forums where people can speak their mind. Some of the boards, commissions, and task force and advisory boards to the mayor and council are aimed to do things like this. They're supposed to be a representative of the community in order to help advise, consult, and engage with you on what is happening. And also, or to empower the residents or stakeholders and community jurors to actually vote on how to move forward. Have a deliberate polling process. And again, the boards and commissions and task force, like Planning Commission, they make decisions on how the city has certain projects when it pertains to planning. So basically what we will create is a community engagement life cycle. It'll begin with creating the community engagement plan, using those 5 levels of public participation to decide what a particular project needs. It can be one, two, or all of them, but you do have those stages. Then it's time to put that plan in action. So if it's inform and consult, this might look like having social media campaign and then having a community meeting or community vision meeting like is currently being planned with the King Farm Farmstead project. Then once all that information is gathered, the decision makers start making the decision. But then we have to inform the public on how their input influenced their decision. It won't be just their participation, but we need to let them know, hey, you were heard. We saw you and we heard you. Then it's time to reflect and evaluate the effectiveness of the engagement process. Sometimes you can do everything and all the things and not get what you think you were going to get or what you thought you should get. So that we all should, we will continuously reflect on each community engagement plan to make sure that the next one is better. Maybe we did something wrong, maybe we should have did more, but that's the time to figure that out. And then you plan the city will plan for future projects, and then the process and the cycle starts all over again. So what are some of our current outreach and engagement tools? We have, of course, Rockville Reports, our social media and digital media e-newsletters, the city website, Rockville 11, and copy print productions such as postcards, posters, mailers, etc., things that are tangible. Some of the engagement tools that we have is our engagerockville.com site. This is where project details live. It's a one-stop hub for a certain project, so where all the information can be found. Again, the zoning rewrite project that has an Engage Rockville site. Again, I hate to bring up the King Farm Farmstead rehabilitation one, but they were our case study on how we would have this framework work. So that's where all that information would live. You will also see on that site the progress of the project, and then also the interactive surveys and feedback where I know for the Farmstead project, there is surveys planned so that you can receive feedback and we could know what people want from this particular project. And then there is the Volunteer Rockville site. This is a site that we share with the county. And it has it's an interactive site that highlights various city volunteer opportunities, and the public is allowed to sign up and participate. Some of the engagement opportunities, that we're currently doing now, and a couple of new ones too. Town hall meetings, in person, virtual, or hybrid. This way you can meet people who don't want to leave their home, but they want to participate. So we give them an opportunity to feel included. Walking neighborhood tours. We call them, or you know them as walking town hall meetings. You pick a community, go talk, literally connect with them. It's just that simple. Drives and giveaways. We all familiar with our holiday drive. That is one of our best programs to actually meet and help and service the community. And community collaboration workshops. Various projects have community vision meetings. Rockville 2040 had several of those where they invited the community to voice their opinion on how they saw the future of Rockville. And we have a new one that I would like to put forward. It's called Neighborhood Connect. This is more a relaxed version, picking a different area, and when the weather permits, like maybe at a park, maybe some of the members of the elected body just meet people there. Talk about whatever they want. It's not topic specific, but it's an opportunity for people to be seen and heard. And isn't that the goal of our engagement? Connecting with the community. This is a Rockville 11 program that I would like to have produced. It's a monthly program that's hosted by all of you. This is when you get to talk about the topics that you want to address for that month and have different guests, city staff. Maybe it's somebody in the community you know on the show to discuss it so people can learn more about it. So, what are our next steps? Staff will work to operationalize the Engage Rockville initiative. As I mentioned before, currently we're using the community engagement plan method that I described here and for the King Farm Farmstead Rehabilitation Project. Also, In FY '26, we're looking to develop a communications and community engagement department. This department does what we need it to do. It has outreach and engagement. It'll be split up into two different divisions. Communications division, which is basically PIO right now. They're in charge of our outreach. But a new division, community engagement division, that's where we get to put this plan to work. Those are the people that are going to work with JEDI and make sure that we're tapping into that population that feels unserviced or the historically excluded populations. This will be their job to help departments make sure that these things are addressed and that the plans are executed, and we're using our outreach tools accordingly. Of course, communications and community engagement go hand in hand, so of course they will collaborate on each plan. So now to the requested feedback. Does the mayor and council support the presented framework for the city community engagement framework? Are there additional community engagement opportunities that the mayor and council want to explore? And with that, I am done.
Did you want to see the presentation again?
Just the last slide.
Oh, can you leave the last slide up, please? Thank you.
He just told me. I'm sorry, y'all.
I just want to say thank you for bringing this forward. I know that community engagement is something that we talked about early on in our term. And when we first got on, it was one of the first things that people wanted to do. So I appreciate you thinking about a framework to move this forward. A quick question for me is, I really love thinking about a framework. I appreciate that you went to, other professional associations to look at how we can apply that here. For the communications and how it currently happens in a decentralized fashion, are you thinking that it will be centralized in the way that all the work is done by your team, or that there still be communication specialists within the departments? Because I know, like, for instance, Rockville City Police Department does have like a timeliness thing. They're working sometimes at night, overnight, because there's an alert that needs to happen to make sure our community is aware. And that's kind of maybe a specialized area, I think, that we need to think through it. And they do it well. But just when there are weather emergencies or safety emergencies, I can name several, from rabid coyotes to people in neighborhoods to tornadoes. But that seems like another area that maybe is a kind of a pillar, if you will. And it's not just Rockville City Police Department, it's Public Works and other players and the emergency team.
Mayor, I'll take that one because it covers a lot more departments. So the goal is to still use a decentralized model for other departments. Great examples, if something happens in the middle of the night with police, they got to get messaging out, right, for sure. But what we're talking about, the centralized piece, is to make sure that departments know how to prepare a community engagement plan, that they're consistent, that they use the right branding and the right approach. If all the departments are doing a very different approach with different branding, that could create confusion in the organization. So the new department is really going to be kind of a clearinghouse to check that the plans are being done in accordance with this feedback strategy, and also as consultants to the departments. When they come up with a community engagement plan that they'll share with Kathy and I, we may say, hey, have you thought about this technique, and this technique, et cetera. So we're going to train them up on how to do those techniques and have them go off and do their thing. But you're right, certain emergency situations, the department's got to be doing their own thing.
Excellent, thank you. And I'll say two other things, and then I'll pass it on to Councilmember Fulton. The Neighborhood Connect, that is what we've been calling Council in the Community, correct?
Yes, I was just trying to not follow.
Go for it.
I saw it before somewhere else. How about that?
Okay,
so I just wanted to be original. I just was trying to be original and call it something different.
I appreciate the innovation. The important thing is what we do and how we do it, right? And so I appreciate that. That is something that some of us have said we really want to do and get out in the community. It's nice to be here at the dais, but the real work is in community. And so that's something I was just wondering, what will be the next steps to look at, not a content calendar, but a plan to get out into the community.
I think we'll come up with some recommended opportunities to go out and listen. I mean, I think a couple of you guys know, we're going to be going out to Parkside second week in February. Not all of you know, because I haven't told all of you, but I will this week, to have a conversation with folks. That's a good example. So these will come up sometimes based on feedback we have from the community. Other times you might just say, you know what, we should go out to this community and have another conversation. Even tonight, you mentioned a community conversation. If you think about it, talked about the ZTA amendment, next steps. We'll go out in the community, chat with people. If you guys want to join us in that, we would encourage that. So it'll be a combination of Kathy, myself, other departments saying, hey, council, here's an opportunity for you to go out there. But we'd also encourage you guys to say to us, can we develop our conversation community, an opportunity to go out in the community and have that conversation? We'll help facilitate that.
Thank you. And in your comments, you talked about reaching underrepresented groups, and I also just want to say equity is part of that. So I just wonder if, I know you made some changes to the presentation, if we could just make sure that is also updated on the agenda so that people can see how that we're thinking about that in an inclusive fashion. That's something that kind of popped out at me, and I know it's how we normally think, but because it's a framework, I just want to make sure that we add it to our framework so every department is thinking about that as well. Yep. Councilmember Fulton, then Councilmember Valeri.
Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. I like the framework. I like the way you're thinking about it. It matches the way I've seen things in other places. Two, I don't know if they're questions or clarifications. I think of it as there's engagement needed on initiatives, and then there's just baseline ongoing engagement that's needed, right? So one example of that, I think you talked about the King Farm engagement. That's an initiative. So it's kind of two separate things you're building here. How to tackle an initiative to get the engagement, and then just a baseline ongoing city engagement with the community. I'm understanding that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Perfect. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was, I like the name Neighborhood Connect, because I think it's important that it's a connection with the city government that we're trying to make, right? It's a connection with the city of Rockville, not necessarily a particular council member. So I actually like that change to focus on the city. So thanks for that. Those are my two comments. I'm on board. I like it. Thanks.
Councilmember Valeri, and then Councilmember Jackson, and then Van Grack and Shaw. As a stack.
We're just excited. We love community engagement. Yes, first I want to start with a thank you for all the hard work behind this. I know firsthand how tricky it can be, and especially when you start going up and up in the hundreds of staff that are connected to what this plan is going to do. I love the framework, so A++ on that. I agree with Madam Mayor of adding in the language on that. I do want to say under opportunities, a new opportunity that I'd truly like to explore, and I hope that none of my colleagues take offense to this. I don't think they will. It would be really helpful for those of us not in HOAs or otherwise closed communities to also have the opportunity to hear from those communities. I know often, you might wait around for an invitation, but I kind of like to be proactive. And I think it would be a good opportunity for those of us kind of outside the structure to hear from those particular communities. I do feel a little disconnected there. I have struggled all along I love the division, because I struggled all along with a communications and community engagement mashup, for lack of better phrasing. And I do like the idea of decentralizing urgent communications, because it needs to be nimble and it needs to be quick. I'm always concerned with any sort of engagement that, in particular outreach style of engagement, that is not being done by outreach professionals, because it's such a particular skill set that it can go awry very quickly. So I really appreciate that approach. I think I did that. I also like when you were going through all the different collateral materials that the city produces. I just always want to put a plug in for something small, maybe postcard size. That would be quick information on critical services. Things I think connecting with the Community Services Advisory Commission on this would be really helpful. They have a lot of these kind of pre-built, but in particular, when a while ago I had wondered if we had like a single postcard to share with unhoused individuals within the city. I was kind of pointed to two different flyers as opposed to maybe just a one-stop shop of here's what the city branded as well would be super awesome. I think that might be all that I have. Oh, and I do want to put in a plug. I think that our city social media is great. It's come a long way since I've been paying attention to it. It's just been a little while. I do want to put in a plug for the city to get active and engaged on Blue Sky, as there was a pretty large exodus of individuals from X, formerly known as Twitter, and a lot of people are closing their accounts in the other space. So, but other than that, this is great.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
All right, thank you, Mayor. First, let me say, I love this plan. This is exactly what we need to be doing, and so thank you for putting this together. I really am excited about Neighborhood Connect, formerly council and the community. I would just say, the city to the north does a really good job of Neighborhood Connect, and they have the city divided into 8 areas, and they try to hit 4 areas every year. So I think that's a good model. It doesn't have to be the only model, but I think we don't really have to reinvent the wheel either. And I really am excited about everything that you laid out. I would say that it's really important to have a neighborhood liaison on the ground for a lot of reasons, but also for the reasons that Councilmember Valeri laid out. It's hard to get into HOAs in particular because they're private organizations. So the better we can liaison, get in there, have two-way communication, I think the more successful we're going to be, talking about the members of the mayor and council, in terms of getting in there and being able to talk to the HOA staff. Now, I did want to shift gears a little bit, and you guys had a heads up on this, and talk about the communication and the channels that we have. I couldn't help but notice in the survey that was talked about earlier that they took a look at the city's channels, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that social media was not really used by many people to get their news, especially from the city. The printing materials were higher. The printed newsletter, Rockville Reports, was higher, and then the official city website was highest. And so I think that would be something that would be good for you guys to take into account as you kind of putting your plan together. How do people get their news? And to the point that Councilmember Valeri was making, maybe we weren't asking the right questions. We say social media as if it's just Facebook or Twitter. And there's now a myriad of options out there. There's YouTube, there's Blue Sky, there's Mastodon. Maybe I just made one up. I don't know. Instagram.
No, you did it. You did it.
Instagram, YouTube, whatever. So maybe that is something that we could look at in the survey later on when we do another one, and ask actually which social media do you use, because now there's all these next door. I don't know why, but next door there as well. So I just noticed that, because as I was going through the packet, I noticed the survey results and then your engagement presentation, which is just, let me say, fantastic. But I would just be remiss to say, we had noticed that from 2018 to 2024, there was a drop across the board in how people got their news from the city. So I want to explore that further with you, but also with David Gottesman and others, because I'm just concerned that, we're not asking the right questions and maybe we're not looking into the right channels to get our news out. Because obviously, either this is a one-off and that's fine, or there's really something going on with how people are getting their news, and we need to find out how people want to get the news and how people are getting the news. And with that, we'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Van Grack.
So I'm first obviously going to echo my colleague's feedback that appreciate the detail. This wasn't just something that you threw up. It had thought, it had detail, it had specific examples, and significant kudos to you. And then I know that your department of putting it together. I want to bring up something that's similar but a little bit different than what my colleagues are saying. We clearly need to get information. It's about engagement. It's about not only getting information to the public, but getting feedback from the public. And I just want to emphasize, when I've engaged with the public, both as a council member and listening to people, the engagement experiences that I think are most valuable and get us the feedback from those who aren't regularly engaging with us are those in-person interactions where we're going out in the community. When we stay here at City Hall, whether it's through Channel 11, whether it's through our email or social media or here in City Hall, sometimes it's the same folks who are getting our information and that we're hearing from. When we've had our neighborhood walks, when we've had the neighborhood town hall, we've seen people who are like, wow, I've never met you guys before. I've never come to a meeting. And those are the people that probably need to hear from us the most and can be engaged to potentially learn how they can get more information from us, whether it's social media, whether it's via email, whether it's aspects. So I love the emphasis that you've had, that you've clearly been listening to us when it comes to the neighborhood town halls, when it comes to the walking neighborhood tours. And I don't care what it's called, whether it's Neighborhood Connect or otherwise, us getting out to the neighborhoods, it's critical. Even just, I can tell you, sitting here, and even when I've gone door to door as a candidate, people say, I would love to see the city come to us, because that's us saying to them, you don't need to come to us, we're going to come to you. And I think people most appreciate that. So that emphasis that you put on there, I think, is greatly appreciated. I also want to echo what my colleagues were saying about social media. It's tough. And it's funny, my colleague mentions Blue Sky. There actually is a City of Rockville Blue Sky entry, but it's interesting because it notes itself as not official yet, but hoping to be. So, I mean, my guess is it's not your office, but I presume it's not your office someone's spoofing. Is that right?
Yes, that is not the city of Rockville. It is not an official social platform.
Exactly. And so I guess that goes into what my colleagues were saying about potentially us being on top of other social media, at least to reserve it, even if we're not using it as much as some of the more common, at least so when there's emergency alerts, we can say, all right, there's a list of 20 that we have to get the emergency alerts out, that we have official platforms, but regularly there's the normal ones that we go to, just to kind of something to be alert, because the last thing we want is a spoofed account because we're not on it and people believing that that's giving out information where we're not in control of it.
If you would like that non-official account, I have on good information that someone would give it to you. But I do think that it's not me. I do think that to the comment on social media, I mean, sometimes just to even protect our brand, just like how you do with the websites, you buy certain URLs, it may be good to park some of the social platforms so that no one takes it over and it looks like an official city account when it's not. Councilmember Shaw.
I also want to echo my colleagues in saying thank you. This is a really excellent framework. I do have a few questions. Is this framework, just a clarification, is this framework particularly for historically underrepresented groups or general population? Because I see this framework working really well with the general population, but there's a number of barriers, I think, that would hinder some success with applying this to underserved communities.
It's actually for both. And with the resources and working collaboratively with JEDI, this will give them the foundation to go out and get that information and get to those people. And like you said, meet them where they are in order to include them. This is literally the foundation for across the board because collaboratively with JEDI, we can use this to make sure we're including them.
Like one example is with the spectrum, and I love the spectrum. My experience working with the spectrum, particularly with underserved communities, is that government entities tend to stay in the inform and the consult area, and it's very hard to transition into the involve. And I just have not seen government entities get to the empower for underserved communities. With that being said, I think there are different communities in different spaces of this spectrum. You know, you may find like a neighborhood civic association may be in the empowered piece, right? And then you find some of our underserved communities may be in the informed piece. So I think there's just like different, just because of some of just like the general history of the city, who has organized themselves into groups and having the capacity to do that. I think there's just to recognize that there's different neighborhoods, different demographics, different groups all across the spectrum. And so when we're applying the spectrum to an initiative where you may have several different people from those different groups represented, it can get a little tricky. I also wanted to ask, particularly with underserved communities, particularly those that are very vulnerable, like if your community has a large amount of folks that are on the brink of eviction, or a large amount of folks where there's power dynamics between tenant and landlords. Is there any type of particular procedure or anything that you would do differently with applying this type of framework? Because I think we really need to be careful about going into communities at some point where I'm sure the event will be fine, but I'm worried about after that event, particularly where there are strong dynamics between tenant and landlord or management companies that can really impact people's lives in the housing. So I was just trying to see if there was some like space for that to try to figure that out.
I'll take that one. Kathy and I have been talking about this with other departments. That's when I would require a very specific community engagement plan for an initiative or a challenge we're facing with where candidly we may want to use different techniques, multiple techniques to get good feedback. Some very open, very public, like in this room, some council going out in the community. But then at times, and I think some of you have recommended this, very small focus groups, very quiet, just a handful of people going there where we know people are being vulnerable and we know it's going to be challenging to get people to share their candid, honest opinions. That's when you want to go with a smaller group and you want to take your time and you want to make sure that the people that they're with are trusted. You don't want to open it up to the public is what I'm saying. And then we have to be really thoughtful in taking really good notes, share that with the community and say, this is what we heard, you agree? And then bring it back to you guys. That's how we'd have to do that, to be really sensitive to make sure that we have a very specific plan. We know what it is, we execute it, and we be as thoughtful as we can with how we share that feedback with others.
Okay. I only share this. There was one event where following up with some of the residents from that event, felt like they were in a more of a vulnerable situation. And one of their landlords actually came here and spoke against a policy that most of them were being impacted by. So I think, and that landlord then mentioned the event during their testimony, during their testimony. So I think we should be like very careful, particularly with these vulnerable groups, and recognizing like not just one kind of the same way that we do the Neighborhood Connect, it should be applicable to like the way we do it with a neighborhood civic association to the way that we do it with some very vulnerable groups. I also wanted to ask you about what are your thoughts or like process in this in terms of building trust with communities? Because I know for a lot of like historically underrepresented communities, sometimes residents say that they really need their needs addressed or their services as opposed to like an engagement opportunity. And so what are some of the ways that you think about like building trust?
So I think it's going back time and time again to the same group, right? I've shared this Jeffism with you guys before, but I really mean it. You can't make friends when you need them. And when I say that is this Saturday, several of us were at the Lincoln Park Community Association meeting, right? It's very familiar, really good attendance, really easy conversation. And it's because people have been going to that meeting for a long time. They ask questions, they ask for feedback, they ask for help. And we come back and just say, here's exactly what we're doing. So when we need help with that neighborhood, i.e. design guidelines, we're going to get really candid feedback from them. We're not going there for the first time to establish that relationship to get feedback. They know us, they trust us, they'll get good feedback, and it helps shape policy. So I will say it's a lot of touches in a lot of different ways. And sometimes, and I think Councilmember Van Grack was leaning into this, and so is Councilmember Jackson, you just go to the neighborhood to hang out, see what's going on, say hi. That's how you develop trust. It's not when you need something, you got to get feedback. It's just to say, hi, how are you, so they recognize the face.
Okay, so I was thinking more about some of the groups that are really like on the brink of like eviction or on the brink where they really need some immediate services, or there were requests for inspections, and like I think the response time or delivery of that can actually build trust, like you're actually addressing people's needs. And so I think that should also be, if we're talking about vulnerable groups, then like some types of need assessment and delivering on those needs promptly, I think can also build some of the trust. I have some questions about equity, but I'll hold back.
Thank you. I want to echo the comments of my colleagues. I am very interested in the Council in the Community Neighborhood Connect, whatever we call it. I do find those events to be opportunities for people to learn. I know for me, when I went to several of them, we were helping with food distribution. People wanted to know where they can get food, language services. They were asking questions, and they're like, wow, I didn't realize the city had that. So I think those really have an opportunity for us to think about groups that we traditionally engage, but also make deliberate efforts to go out to communities that are not necessarily engaged. I agree with you on the community meetings that we've gone to where we've established relationships. It's great because there's a lot more engagement and trust, because also not just because we went to the meetings, but we're actually delivering on the issues that they've asked us about, but whether that's pedestrian safety and sidewalks, or a playground in their community, a shelter. So I really think that when people see who we are and that we're delivering on the things that they ask about, that will help us to have a relationship, to get better feedback, for them to know who to contact, and also just to walk in their community to see what things look like I walk the city all the time, and you can't just drive across the city. You have to walk where people are seeing, and you start to notice different things about how children are congregating, or how singers are crossing the street, or wires that are hanging, just to make their community, I have to say wires, to help make the community better. And this goes to another comment that I've made in our GARE discussion is, I want us to be a city that is not just responsive to people who make complaints, or the limited people who come in this room, but that we are looking at who, more holistically, who haven't we heard from, and getting out into communities. And that may mean that the whole city, all of us are ambassadors to share and represent the community. Whether you are an esteemed sanitation worker who sees a problem in the community, you report that, or you are a code enforcement and there's an issue, we all need to keep our eyes open to see how we can make our community better, but to also deliver services. So I wanted to just note it's a sea change and a shift, because I know some things are, whether they're potholes or streets that are not, major areas that are not cleaned up yet. Those are not just, yes, we can take complaints, but also we should have proactive efforts to make sure that we're looking at, from a service perspective, all corners of the city. And always asking ourselves who is not here and who have we not heard from, and then kind of stopping mid-survey or whatever engagement is to say, okay, how do we get back to the people we haven't heard from? I wanted to ask about, my colleague mentioned the neighborhood coordinators, and I was just curious about your community engagement approach, because I remember at Rockville that we did have neighborhood coordinators. I know that's expensive, but I was curious to how you're thinking, because we are a large city. I do know that various parts of, whether you're in permitting or some people break up the city into regions. And so I was just curious as to how you're thinking about that engagement part of things.
Well, you first have to start with the resources of it all, someone to lead, right? So I wanted to approach it the same way I sort of approach communication right now. Right now, we have 2 public engagement, public information specialists. They're assigned to the departments, right? Because when we want this level of feedback and this level of public participation, normally it's driven by some city initiative, right? I would like to have those assigned to the different departments to help work with the department on creating the framework and using the tools and techniques and going on the spectrum to see which level of public participation we need. But then also the community engagement manager will be the one that is boots on the ground to give to the specialist to be, okay, I went to this neighborhood meeting, this is happening. So just that's foundationally how I'm looking at it. But then I want to make sure we're getting someone in that can help us make it more formal and deliberate so that we can use the proper, best practices to make that happen, so that we are reaching out to, like, Council Member Shaw said, those people who don't come to the meetings, the people that need the things right now, and making sure that we're at least people see the attempts that we're making to engage and involve them.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson and Valeria were talking about our channels. And so I know I always get asked about the website, but just for the public to know, we are redoing our website, right? And there will be maybe an app, but just if you could speak on that.
So everything hinges on the brand, the public release of the brand, which is coming soon, very soon. And once that brand is released and made public, then that will coincide with the city's website, because the brand is what is the foundation of that city website and also the mobile app. But we have to get the brand public. Coming soon. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the last 2 things I'll say is I just want to be mindful of the fact that there are certain communities who feel afraid given the national rhetoric and hate rhetoric and all the things. And so as a city, we're going to have to think about what that means for how we communicate and build trust, how we work with third-party intermediaries to support and protect our community. And also thinking about how we deliver services, right? Like I've heard, I won't name specific program, but I've heard a program that had 30 people now has 7, just because of fear and people feeling over targeted. And so I just wanted to just put that reality of, that may have an impact our community engagement efforts and how we think about addressing those issues. The other 2 things I was going to say is I was also thinking that because we have some things that are required by law and some things that are just initiatives, at some point when you do the communications plan, it would just be helpful to see, like, there's a matrix. Is there, like, what rises to the level of 6 channels versus, we're doing the 1. I know Washington Post is a great publication, though it's not the only place that people are getting their news for some of our public hearings or other things. So I just want to make sure that we're not just looking at what the code requires, but how we do more global communication. And then the last thing I'll mention is that some of us have talked about this idea of council cares, in addition to getting out into neighborhoods, getting to work with some of our nonprofits and partners, because there are some people that they are serving that we need to better understand their needs and also support them. So I think that's just, I put it in the email question to you, and I appreciate that, but I wanted to see if we could add that to the list. And I know we've talked about this in the past.
Yeah, that was the other thing I forgot.
Okay. Do you have a question? Okay. Councilmember Shaw.
I was just also going to just add houses of worship as well.
Yes. Absolutely, I agree. And I know houses of worship, as part of the groups that we've talked about, and some of them are also doing food service, and they're meeting people where they are in a lot of areas. So nonprofits, they are nonprofits, that's true. So I just, I appreciate you working on this matrix. It is, and framework is fantastic. And I know this is one of many steps ahead, but a step in a positive direction.
Thank you.
Councilmember Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to echo my colleagues on many of the points, and just, I'm in favor of what is proposed, and thank you for listening to us and moving forward with this. That's all.
Thank you. And now you need some clones.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'll note the time is 10:13. We're close, but we are now moving into mock agenda item number 13. One thing I'll note is we did move the Rockville Town Center Master Plan to add to January 27th. So if we could make that adjustment, also adjust the times to represent that change. Does anyone else have any other comments on the mock agenda? Okay, old new business. I have just a few items, and maybe I can get us out here in time. We'll see. I'll be fast. One is I've been working with Senator Kagan on reaching out to Senator Alsobrooks' team to ask that they consider putting an office in Rockville. Done that personally a couple of times, but I wanted to see if the body would be willing to draft a letter to make that a formal request. Okay, so I will accept that as all, it was unanimous, no one motion made yet, but we can say that's unanimous support for that.
Do you want us to draft the letter, Mayor?
Yes, please.
Okay, happy to.
And if you need, I'm sure Linda knows, but I can give you the person if needed. The next relates to Councilman Van Grack. Rockville Sister City has a global engagement that they would like our input on, but I think we need to maybe request that the city clerk help us in identifying which council members would like to participate so we can get back to them this month. So I just want to put that on the radar. Councilman Van Grack, did you want to say anything?
I just want to add, they were asking for feedback this week. Apparently.
I did, and I did respond to David saying we will get back to him, but it may not be exactly this week because we have to.
Okay, so.
Can you, so let's explain the event. I know there was an email shared some time ago, but this is Rockville Sister City. They came and presented to us, and there is a potential for a delegation to go to Pinnenberg. So for their anniversary. So this is what this relates to. So I'm just asking the city clerk to please send out something to all of us see if we can get some more information on like what it is, what's the timing is, and who would actually go, so that the members of the body can weigh in on whether they would be attending or not, because I know that they need to get a delegation in order. I know some of us know we would go, but they maybe offer to our colleagues as well. Councilman Van Grack.
And just to clarify, the city of Pinneberg has asked us, they were asking for this week because they want to try to, the official delegation, get them a hotel stay in downtown Pinneberg. The difficulty is this is a large scale event that's happening for the city that they want us to be in. And there's a limited ability for them to be able to reserve certain hotel rooms. I know it's, even though 9 months outside, and so they've asked to get us a number of the delegation, and that there is going to be an official delegation this week.
So I think this merits just a follow-up, and so that each council member has an opportunity to see what it is and what their time allows. But I know the city has done these kinds of trips, and some people have gone, some people haven't. But I want to make sure that the whole body has the same information and can weigh in. Councilmember Valeri.
On this point, and Councilmember Van Grack may have this information. I know the last time that Sister Cities came before us, we had not gotten a report in advance, and there were some questions and some concerns, and it sounded like it might be coming down the road later. Do you happen to know if that is in the works? Sorry to put you on the spot. It just pinged me because I've talked to some of the Sister Cities board members, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you all will get it," and which I think is great. I just don't know as far as for our planning purposes and our planning calendar where to expect that.
I mean,
Councilman Van Grack, sorry.
I know that they've put together some proposals that have gone to the city with regard to that I think were meant to be either shared with the mayor and council, that I don't know whether we've gotten back with regard to finances and planning. With regard to a specific report to the mayor and council, I've not heard them discuss it specifically, other than a planning and engagement and in goals and specifics that I know went to the city. I guess there was a request from the city manager's office as part of the budget as well. I'm not sure if that's what was intended, but I'm sure the city manager's office would share it with mayor and council. But I don't know that if it was, I don't recall specific questions that were meant to be answered, but if there were, I'm sure they'd be welcome to answer.
Maybe let's take this offline and follow up. Is that okay? All right, thank you. Yes, Councilman Fulton.
Sorry, I'm just processing. The ask on the first thing about the trip to Pinneberg, is there just information that some people have that others don't that they can just forward? Like, I don't understand the ask of staff on this one.
So
yes, there was an email that was
Did
sent.
I miss it?
No, you
Okay.
didn't miss it. I'm not sure who was on the email,
Okay.
but I didn't go into detail with it because it just came a couple of days ago. So I'll look at it tomorrow
Cool.
and get it out to everybody.
Thank you. So yeah,
and see what other information we can get.
Thank you. I had just asked a couple of questions and said, Sarah, could you help set up a meeting to get more information so we can ask the council? So I'm just formally letting you all know and asking. And so
Yeah, I believe the notice came, it was either like Friday night or Saturday morning.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Last thing I'll say is the WSSC essential water piece has been lifted, just FYI, while we're meeting here. So that's good news. And my last comment relates to our housing work session and comments that some of us made about RealPage and algorithms. I know I have been in touch with the Secretary of Housing, and I follow up with others within the state and the county about this. There is a lawsuit that the Department of Justice is engaging on, but I did mention during our work session that the city of Philadelphia has banned this kind of practice, and I asked that we look at exploring whether the city of Rockville could leverage that precedence of what the city of Philadelphia has done. City of Rockville can leverage a precedence of what the city of Philadelphia has done. So it's a question, a legal question, and I would like to get more information about that. Councilmember Jackson, do you have a hand up? I saw you, and then I'll go to you.
No, thank you, Mayor, and I agree with you. This is really a growing problem. This algorithm is really driving rates up, and I would like to do something, whether it's like Philadelphia, or whether it's talking to, putting a letter together and talking to the Attorney General. But I just feel like, we should do something, because I think the playing field is becoming uneven, more so than it has been. And it's a real problem that's just going to get worse. And I just feel like we should be good stewards and take action if we can.
Councilmember Shaw.
I also brought this up during the first work session. Another city is San Francisco, and you can also look at their model. And a way to address predatory rent hikes and rent gouging is also with rent stabilization.
Thank you. Councilman Valeri, did you have a comment?
I did. I just wanted to echo, I was actually doing a thumbs up that I too am supportive of looking to see if there is a way that we could also enact a similar ban. And I'm open to looking, I was more familiar with the Philadelphia example. I'm open to looking myself at San Francisco, but it would be most helpful from City Attorney's Office if we could see if that's something that we can do.
Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I associate myself with the comments of my colleague, Councilmember Shaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Councilman Valeri.
I actually have one quick item, but it might turn out to be back and forth with Councilmember Jackson. I know that we mentioned looking at the CCOC. Given, some of us watched some of our municipal colleagues who are also looking at this issue and looking at potential solutions and potential cost savings as well. Is this something that we could get, and I'm happy to share their discussion and presentation, but it may be an opportunity to also do similarly or look at some sort of inter-municipality solution that would also would be much more fair to residents and would not perhaps cost as an exorbitant amount. So I of course defer to folks who actually live in HOAs that have to deal with the CCOC, but I just don't want to lose this thread because, just hearing some examples, I heard from a resident that when their condo had burned down, we're still being required to pay HOA fees. And it was months upon months. And trying to find out ways that, is that really truly the most fair utilization of HOA fees? So that's just one example, but I was wondering if my colleagues would similarly like to look at this issue, particularly headed into budget time.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Not to turn it into a back and forth, but I agree to look into the CCOC and what our colleagues to the north are discussing is, interesting option. And I would just note that, we had a ZTA earlier that we were talking about, and all the work that the city staff has done between the HOA and the tenants or the residents there. And, I think that we should be basically turning them over to the CCOC, but we're not. And we put a lot of work into it, and I think we're going to have a good outcome. But we're doing the work on the ground right now that the CCOC should be doing, but isn't. So it doesn't make sense to me to be paying money for services that we're not getting. And so we should be investigating how we can do that here and get the good services that our residents not only want, but deserve. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll just note that I have heard from another HOA that is concerned about this, and I know you have started the investigation process to get information and are trying to collect data to share with us.
If I could just comment, it's going to take us a while to do that. I mean, probably months, you guys, but certainly it's top of mind. We've done some preliminary research. I actually have more research to share with you this week. But in terms of putting together recommendations before budget, I think that'll be a tough road to hoe, but sometime over the next several months, certainly. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Just one more plug for our MLK event on Sunday at 1:30. And if there's no other comment or question, we can entertain a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Shaw,
I move to adjourn.
Councilmember Jackson.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Hey.